Okay, thank you. So it's 8:30 and I'll call to order the regular council meeting of April the 9th. We have an agenda in front of us. I have a couple of additions that I'd like to make under council and committee reports. 9.1 would be FCSS, and 9.2 would be Drumheller, Mayor Reeves, Special Area Chair meeting. So, are there any other additions? Councillor McGee.
Brief CAPE update.
Okay, 9.3 CAPE update. Councillor Cunningham.
And council and committee reports, I'll do a Division 5 ratepayer meeting update. Thanks.
Okay, so Division 5, 9.4. Any other updates or changes? Councillor Christie.
If not, I'll move the agenda as amended.
Okay, so we have a motion to adopt the agenda as amended. All those in favor? And that's carried unanimously. The minutes from the March 26th council meeting were pre-circulated. Are there any changes or errors? If not, Councillor McGee.
I'd like to move that we adopt the minutes of March 26th, regular meeting of council as presented.
Thank you for that. So we have a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes from the council meeting of March 26th as presented. All those in favor? That's also carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, first item in our agenda will be Corporate Services 6.1, 2024 assessment and tax rate. Did I skip something? Oh, I'm sorry. Yep. There's so many no report. So sorry, Jenna. 5.4.1 Economic Outlook Agriculture. And anytime you're ready, Ms. Kester.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, Council. I'm excited to bring to you today a new series of initiatives that the Economic Development Department is working on. We're calling them Economic Outlook, and they're focusing on different sectors of industry in our region. So the first one is going to be focusing on agriculture. These will focus on the purpose of identifying and discussing economic challenges, opportunities the region will face, how our residents can adapt to meet these changes, and how Kneehill County's Council can support the future recommendations. We're going to focus on ag as the pilot project and the necessary discussions and research needed to prepare. The first project will be split into two parts, grain and livestock. Other initiatives will be focused on at a later date, including tourism and the oil and gas industry. So we are looking forward to engaging with working groups and industry specialists for these projects. We will be bringing together members from the community who are forward-thinking individuals with one goal in mind, to understand the current environment and to provide council with insight on the potential future of these sectors. With the approval of the project plan from council, administration will recruit working members through social media and the newspaper. I'll add to that. Similar to the Municipal Development Plan Working Group application, we will be surveying the community to find these future drivers of like-minded individuals. The working group will consist of 2 members of council and 3 or 4 members at large. And members at large will be appointed by council once they apply. And they must be landowners within the county.
Counselor Phobes has a question, and then,
So why did you choose just the landowners and not people that have that have a business as well?
We can include them as well, yeah, but mostly for agriculture, when we're focusing on the ones who own the landowners within the county. As this unfolds, we can broaden the working group members, yeah.
I just would like to see industry included since they are also part of our tax base.
Yeah,
So if they own the
that's true,
company and
too.
they work within Kneehill County, they should have a right to be at that table.
Yeah.
That's all.
That's true, okay, we'll take note of that. Yeah,
and just before you leave that one, I guess I had a question related to that too. And I'd rather see us specify active farming members of the community rather than just landowners, because we have a large collection of landowners who are paying taxes, but they're not necessarily actively
Active.
involved in agriculture. So
yes.
my hope would be is that we are selecting actively. So anyway, Mike and then Kevin.
Just in response to that, one of the things we looked at in looking at the landowners was more along, as Jenna was going to, is that agricultural producer element. So there we do have a number of other, whether they're business owners or residents, other things in the county. For this one, we were kind of looking at that actively agricultural producing individuals. So what we're anticipating is that this is the first of a series of these over the next bit of future. So as we get into other ones, you know, down the road, depending on how this goes, down the road, if we do want an oil and gas, we'd look for people specific to the oil and gas industry. If, you know, that we're working in that industry. If we did one on tourism, we'd be looking specifically for tourism operators, that type of thing. So that was kind of where the landowner one on this went, was looking at individuals who are active agricultural producers.
Okay, thank you for that. Mr. Gannon.
Thank you. Through the chair, he stole my thunder.
Well, I guess to me, the clarification that we're looking for active agricultural producers, landowners within Kneehill County, that's, to me, that is quite a clarification, and so that helps. Councillor Christie?
One of my comments is I'd really like to see those active members being 25 to 35. I'm serious. I'd like to see the younger groups getting involved in this. Not yet, but I may. I'm thinking about a seed plant board, how many of them I can, because there are a bunch of young members that are strong.
So I guess the intent would be we're looking for a diverse number of individuals who are actively engaged in agriculture, and they are going to be applying through the same process as we did through the municipal development plan.
Yes, through the chair, we will, and we'll bring those members back to you so you guys can appoint, and they'll have a series of questions that they'll have to answer if they're actively farming, how old they are, what line of business they're in and everything, so
Okay.
that should be more clarifying too.
Thank you for
Yeah,
that.
okay,
I think you're good to move on from there.
all right. So the time commitment of the working group is a maximum of 4 half-day meetings. The compensation, appointed members at large will receive a per diem as well as mileage as per policy 3-3, council appointees reimbursement. And administration has found that other communities have provided successful insight to their councils using this method, and therefore we would like to take a similar proactive approach. So the financial part of this will be the budget for phase 1 of the Economic Outlook Agriculture Project is approximately $4,660 plus approximate 10% contingency for a total budget of $5,200 as laid out in the table below. It is recommended that this project be funded through the Strategic Initiative budget. Going to the table, there's the 4 meetings there that will have the members at large and refreshments for them. And then we're also looking at bringing in industry experts to work with the working group as well. So depending on who we engage with, it may be that they may get a per diem as well, or it might be a part of their specialty that they're paid within the industry. So this is an estimate there. And then we can move.
Just, Jen, if you
Yeah.
don't mind, before you move past that, I was looking at the budget and the sort of what we were considering as potential costs for some of this external experts, and I'm wondering if we should not be leaving ourselves a little more room in the budget in case, like, to me, $500 to have a speaker come in with some expertise to provide information to that group is probably low, based on what I see in the industry. And so I'm just thinking that maybe, and this is between council and I guess yourselves as well, just wondering if our budget's going to be low. And rather than come back and ask for an additional $1,500 or $2,000, maybe we should just be putting that in the budget up front. And I'd rather have you come back and tell me we saved a bunch of money than come back and say we need another couple $1,000 to allow for that.
Okay.
So, and I guess I don't know how the rest of council feels about that, but I know I've done some organization as far as provincial conferences and other situations where we've brought in speakers and experts in the industry, and they don't come very cheaply sometimes.
More costly? Okay, we can definitely explore that and, yeah, bring it back.
Or can we just adjust at this point in time, just to give ourselves the leeway?
Okay, okay.
So I'd be interested in knowing how the rest of council feels about that possibility and whether that's a reasonable suggestion. Councillor Christie.
No, I agree with you that we need to fund the speakers that we need, so to get them here, we have to pay them. So I agree with that. So I don't know whether we amend that to $1,000 a speaker or 1,500.
Any other thoughts?
No, I agree through the chair.
Councillor Penner?
I agree 500 is possibly low, not just trying to find speakers for the Ag Society in our local communities, you know, it's very hard. And hopefully we find one it's part of their job, you know, that doesn't cost us anything.
That's what we were hoping as well, but,
But we
yeah.
should make allowance in case, you know, we do have to, well, it'll be more than $500, I'm sure, even though they're only half days.
Yeah. Okay.
I know that, sorry, I guess to return here, I know that a lot of the, particularly on the artificial intelligence side, the imagery and those types of things that are happening in the industry, certainly the people who are doing the majority of the lead work in that are private industry individuals. And so if we're looking at bringing in experts on that side of things, they are not going to come that cheaply. If we could find government experts that could give us the same kind of information, that would be one thing. We could probably get them. But even then, we're going to have some costs for travel and other expenses. So,
That's right. Yeah.
Mr. Hogan, did you have a comment?
Just through Mr. Chair, I think the, you know, if we were to amend that, if council wanted to put each of those to 1,500, the strategic initiatives budget can absorb that. There's room in there for that. So that wouldn't pose a problem. And what you would do is you would just amend the motion to, instead of being 5,200, it would read 7,200.
Okay, thank you for that. All right, Ms. Kester, I guess if I quit interrupting you, you could continue.
All good. Okay, so now we will move on to the project plan. Show you that as well. There we go. Okay, so I'll just go over the summary here. Kneehill County is a rural community that embraces its agriculture lifestyle and an economically diverse future. One of Council's goals from the 2022 Kneehill County Strategic Plan is to build a robust and adaptable economy. This includes economic diversification, zoning, and support for agriculture. Adapting agriculture to meet future changes is one of the most urgent challenges of our time. If we can understand the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead and adapt to them, we can ensure our successful resilience and sustainability. The purpose of these Economic Outlook series is to identify and discuss economic opportunities and challenges our region will face and to prepare for them with optimum effort. The first of these series, like I said, will focus on agriculture. The industry is adapting and modernizing with higher rates of technology adoption, renewable energy production, use of direct marketing solutions, and sustainable farming practices. As technologies and consumer consumption changes, it's imperative that we help determine what we do, how we do it sustainably, and why. So the project plan, Economic Outlook Agriculture 2024, will be split into 2 phases and 2 working groups, focusing on the following topics. Phase 1, to be wrapped up in fall 2024, will focus on environmental factors, equipment, industry regulations, and succession planning. Phase 2 will be wrapped up in spring 2025. We'll focus on livestock, equipment, Kneehill County exports, and main buyers. So the working group will be formed for each phase with their mission to better understand issues the industry currently faces and to establish actions required to address all types of future economic opportunities and challenges. The working group will be engaged following the structure of International Association of Public Participation. Their objectives will be designed to consider new avenues of economic development to grow the industry and to enhance the region. Working and consulting with business leaders during this process will be key in considering a long-term regional prosperity plan. Industry experts will be consulted with throughout the phase working groups, promoting conversation of the topics at hand and providing guidance on industry trends and stats. So the working groups will be the 2 members of council and the 3 or 4 members at large. And like I said, they'll have to apply to be a part of the initiative. And they'll submit their interest of why they want to be involved and which areas of expertise they can bring to the table. So phase 1 working group will meet after the start of seeding in May, and then after on an as-needed basis, wrapping up their gatherings after harvest, so October to November. The phase 2 working group will meet initially before the start of calving, November to December, and then after on an as-needed basis, wrapping up their gatherings at the end of summer, July or August. Their objectives will be to identify issues the agriculture industry and regions in Kneehill County faces, identify the circumstances that may affect these issues, identify the long-term cooperative involvement of Kneehill County, identify industry expertise, techniques, and infrastructure that may prove for a valuable output for the region. And questions we're using for initial consideration will be, what will ag look like in 5 years, 10 years, and so on? What are the steps to be economically resilient? What are the opportunities for being adaptable? What are the challenges surrounding technology, staff, market trends, industry regulations, weather, and so on? What do we want our community to look like in the future? And where should Kneehill County go? And we have been in contact with a few industry reps, and they're still to be determined as we know our dates and who's available and who we can book for those meetings. So the end goals, both working group findings will be reported in written form to council at the end of their phases. Their report will outline the current state of agriculture in Kneehill County, the industry and trend findings, opportunities and investment strategies to enhance the industry and the local economy with the recommendations made, key focus areas recommended to grow the sector, identify ways Kneehill County can support the ag industry, and the summarization of the working group's thoughts. And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you for that. Questions from Mr. Gannon?
Sorry, I just have a quick note to add, is that through any public participation forum and using the International Association for Participation, we may get other information within these different series and conversations that will put us potentially down a different rabbit hole that we didn't anticipate. So this is just a conceptual plan of where this project could go. However, if there's additional information that we didn't foresee or forecast, we're still going to address or look at those issues which may increase some of the sessions or may increase a requirement to look down those avenues and ensure that we're bringing a fulsome report back to council for consideration. So I just want council to understand that this is a little bit fluid. It can be a little bit fluid depending on the information we receive from speakers and from the group. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. I hope that what comes out of these isn't something that we already knew. And so maybe there'll be a few surprises in there. So, Councillor Forbes and then Councillor Penner.
Could you just let me know what the Ag Service Department would have in this? Because I don't see there's any mention of our Ag Service Department when we're discussing all of this.
Mr. Gannon?
Thank you. Through the chair, Ag is always going to be a stakeholder in certain conversations in the background. They are not going to be active participants within this. This is the future outlook. We'll be working with them in the background in anything that we do in that area. But the main proponent of this is industry and our partners in the community. So as we understand these pinch points within Ag, we'll definitely have conversations and ask for different resources or opinions, but that's part of our internal component of that. But thank you very much for the question. They will definitely be involved in the background.
Sorry, just to follow up.
Okay, yeah, follow up.
And the reason why I'm asking this question is because I know sometimes on the Ag portion of it, they don't always have the time or the resources in which to help. So this is why my question was leading to how much are you going to use on this end?
Okay, no, thanks for that clarification. Councillor Penner.
Just furthermore to what Mr. Gann was talking about, it is a changing environment out there, and thanks for bringing that to our attention. And honestly, I hope that there is something that comes forward that we haven't, not thinking about and things like that. So, and I can honestly see that happening because it is it's a changing environment big time and very fast, and not necessarily all good, but it is changing.
Any other questions, thoughts, comments? I'm coming back to the money, unfortunately. We have a budget here that outlines a single working group, and we have a conversation that describes 2 working groups. So the way my math works, are we talking double the money for 2 working groups? Are we talking, so if we're bringing in, according to that budget, we're bringing in 3 to 4 farm members and we're going with 1 working group, we come up with that $5,200, or as we changed it to $7,200. If we start a second working group that's looking at livestock, is that entirely different from the first working group, and therefore are we talking double the budget?
Yes, through the chair, this budget outlined in the tables for phase 1 only.
Okay.
Yeah.
So should we be considering in whatever we're doing here today, is the motion then just addressing phase 1? Yes, it is. Okay. All right. Thank you. Mr. Hogan, and then Mr. Gannon, I saw you.
Through Mr. Chair, as Ms. Kester said, this budget is for phase 1. Phase 2 isn't planned until into, I think it was the spring of 2025, into that realm. Part of what we're doing here is we're running one of these singularly at the first go, so that we can get a beat on the process, make any tweaks we need to, and see actually at the end of it the entire resource requirement. And then what you'll see us do as a debrief at the end of that is come back and say, okay, this is, for future working groups, we're suggesting we make these tweaks or we change the process a little bit here. But it'll also give us the opportunity to understand the resources required to do this, because we don't want to be, as we said, in looking at these, you've got agriculture, tourism, oil and gas, whatever else. If we're doing one of these in phases every couple of years, you're 8 years down the road by the time you're at the end, right? And so we kind of want to take a look at the resource allocation, do one up by itself to figure out, okay, can we do 1 of these a year? Can we do 3 of them a year? Can we do, right? So that there's some of that information to come back at the end to make some tweaks on the process if needed, and to kind of give an idea of if we want to embark on these other ones, what's that resource allocation versus other things that may be going on. Right?
Okay, thank you for that. Mr. Gannon, did you want to add anything?
Nothing at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Penner?
Being in our county, there's so many farms and that are both livestock and grain, and I think it's just something for us as council to think about too when we appoint these members at large on these committees, that there is the odd one that has both, because even it talks about the environment, the equipment, it all depends, you know, they have the grain and the livestock too. So I think it's very important that we keep that in the back of our mind, council, when we do appoint, that there is a lot of crossover because of the topography and everything that, so just thought I'd bring that up.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other comments, questions, discussion? Okay, I'm not seeing any. What's the direction or wish of council? Councillor Penner.
I like what I've heard this morning. I look forward to seeing the results come out of this. So I'd make the motion that a council approve phase 1 of the Economic Outlook Agricultural 2024 project as presented, with the cost not to exceed $7,200 to be funded through the Strategic Initiative budget.
Okay, thank you for that motion. Any further discussion on the motion or the information provided? I'm not seeing any, so I'm going to ask the question. All those in favor of the motion? And that is carried unanimously. And thank you, Ms. Kester. Appreciate your patience with us this morning and answering our questions. Thank you. Okay, so the next item on our agenda is 6.1, 2024 Assessment and Tax Rate Impact. And for sure, this time, welcome, Ms. Von Merbach. Thank you for being here this morning, and anytime you are ready.
Good morning, Council. Today I'm bringing forward to you a report about 2024 assessment and how it's impacting our tax rates. During the 2024 budget process, Council directed administration to include the following adjustments in the property tax revenues. A 4% increase in the total taxation revenue from residential, a 17.5% increase related to farm, directly related to increased service levels, and a 3.75% increase in non-residential taxation revenues. In addition, Council directed administration to include a reserve draw of $516,804 to balance the budget and mitigate financial impacts on ratepayers for the 2024 fiscal year. When we developed the 2024 budget, the assessment for the 2024 taxation year was not actually known, so we based that off of last year's assessment bases or anything that we knew might shift for that year. When we made those recommended increases, they were made with consideration of the MGA mandated 5-to-1 ratio. When the assessment values for the 2024 tax year were received, there were significant inflationary increases within residential assessment and less significant increases within non-residential, which resulted in, if we implemented those revenue increases, it pushes the 5-to-1 ratio slightly above what we're legislatively allowed to do. In order to bring the 5-to-1 ratio within legislative requirements, administration is recommending that council reduce the revenue increase for non-residential from 3.75 to 3.5%. This would bring the 5-to-1 ratio to 4.99 to 1 and would require an additional draw from the Revenue Stabilization Reserve in the amount of $51,356. This would result in an increased ratio from 2023 to 2024 from 3.75 to 4.9, or from 4.75 to 4.99. However, with the anticipated ending of the oil and gas tax holiday, the ratio is projected to be reduced in 2025 due to the addition of the currently exempt assessment being added to the non-residential assessment base. I would note if that currently exempt assessment was included, we'd be within that 5-to-1 ratio without amending from 3.75% increase to a 3.5. The impact of that ensures that the 5-to-1 ratio is maintained for this year and will likely then go back to kind of where we were previously next year once that tax holiday ends. It would result in a 5.98% decrease in the residential mill rate. This again results in we're projecting a 4% revenue increase, but because assessment has grown about 10%, that actually results in a reduction of the mill rate. About a 17.5% increase on farm, again, because that's a regulated assessment, so the assessment doesn't actually really shift there. And then an actual reduction in the mill rate of 1.24% for non-residential properties. It also totals, with that additional draw from the reserve, would total $568,160 that were coming out of the revenue stabilization reserve to balance the budget for this year. And the impact to the average ratepayer is maintained at basically what council budgeted for, with a little bit of a shift for non-residential properties. So there's a 44% increase for your average acreage, a $19 increase for your average hamlet home, a $70 increase for your average farm quarter section, and a $31 increase for your non-residential properties. Again, that's just related to your municipal taxation rates. And administration can implement the necessary reserve draws and adjustments to the budget within existing internal resources.
Okay, questions, comment related to the 2024 assessment and tax? Councillor Phobes, please.
My first question is when is the normal withdrawal date from the province for the education tax?
Through the chair, they take quarterly installment payments.
Okay, so I guess my next question, sorry, can I have another one?
Councillor Phobes, absolutely.
So when you noticed that this overage, what month last year did you notice this overage?
Through the chair, so this is, this report is just talking assessment, but I understand you're asking a question about requisition. I just want to be clear that it's
sorry.
we noticed it about the end of the year. We realized that there was a difference there.
So, any other questions or comments? Councillor Christie, please.
Just curious, in the crystal ball, do you know have any idea where the ratio will be next year when that tax holiday's over?
Through the chair, if we added that assessment in this year, it would be back down to 4.76, which would be basically on par of where we were at for 2023.
Okay, thank you.
So in the next item we're discussing here shortly, there is some conversation around the requisitions and their impacts on where that puts us. So.
Yes.
Mr. Hogan.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just to add some context to this, one of the reasons when you look at the chart that's in there and it's got the tax class, the revenue change, the mill rate change, just for clarity of council and anybody watching, the assessment on residential, as Ms. Van Merbach said, actually went up about 10%. The majority of that increase was not new development, it was inflationary. So when we're dealing with those inflationary increases, if the mill rate stays the same, then people are going to eat that inflationary increase. So say that it was 8%, and I'm using the number just to demonstrate the point. But if there was an 8% inflationary increase and you kept the same mill rate, that would be the equivalent of an 8% tax increase on an actual dollar basis, right? So that's why the mill rate comes down, because what council said, we're going to collect 4% more dollars than we collected previously. So we need to lower the mill rate because inflation is driving it up further than that. And so this is similar to what we had to do last year when we were trying to cushion that. Of course, as soon as that mill rate comes down, then your 5-to-1 is impacted. And so you can only have your lowest, your non-residential rate can only be 5-to-1, 5 times higher than your lowest residential mill rate. So as soon as that residential mill rate comes down, it starts messing with that formula. So even though the assessment in non-residential went up this year, we can't actually make use of that full increase because that 5-to-1 ratio is binding us.
Thank you for that clarification. Any other discussion or questions? Okay, I'm not seeing any. Are we clear on what's happening? We're soon going to have to make some decisions on where we're going to end up on our tax rate bylaw. So, Councillor McGee.
I move that council amend the 2024 operating budget by reducing property tax revenues by $51,356 and increasing transfers from reserves by the same amount through a draw from the Revenue Stabilization Reserve.
Okay, and we understand that this is necessitated by the fact we have to stay in our 5-to-1 ratio. Any other comment related to the motion? Any questions? Okay, I'm not seeing any, so I'm going to ask the question. All those in favor of the motion? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Van Merbach. Appreciate you coming and being with us this morning. Mr. Hogan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not related to this, but not impacting it, just for council's clarity. When we go through the budget process and adopt the budget on the timing that we do, which is a lot of positivity to doing that, just for council's awareness, the assessment information comes in end of January, end of February. So there's always a bit of tweaks from what we anticipate in the budget versus what actually happens on the ground, because that information comes to us a little bit later.
Okay. Thank you for that. And again, thank you, Ms. Van Merbach. And we're going to move on to 6.2, which is the 2024 Tax Rate Bylaw. And we're going to welcome Ms. Nyman to join us this morning. Welcome. Going to be ably assisted by Ms. Van Merbach.
Yeah. Good morning.
Good morning, and anytime you're ready.
Sure. I'm here to present the 2024 Tax Rate Bylaw update report. So this comes into effect after all the budget stuff is done. So what I'm bringing forward today, I'm bringing forward a recommended motion that we just kind of talked about it, so this kind of summarizes what Marika has already brought to you. But the recommended motion is that council approves a draw from the Revenue Stabilization Reserve in the amount of $220.24 to fund the increased Kneehill housing requisition. That council approves the draw from the Revenue Stabilization Reserve in the amount of $640,286 to fund the 2023 under levy related to the school fund. And what we're doing today is we're just requesting the council give first reading to bylaw 1897, and that is this 2024 tax rate bylaw. So for the past few months, various reports have been presented to council regarding the county's budget, municipal taxation requisitions, and assessment shifts. The outcome of those reports has been direction to administration on how the rates within the annual tax bylaw should be determined. So all your decisions basically are now to direct administration to collect the funds that are in the budget. This report is intended to provide council with a summary of previous recommendations relating to municipal taxes, requisitions, and then move forward with first reading of this 2024 tax rate bylaw. So this bylaw authorizes council to impose a tax in respect of property in the municipality to raise revenue to be used toward the payment of the expenditures as set out in the county's operating budget. In addition to the monies required to support the county's operations, funds are required to be collected and remitted for the Alberta School Fund, a designated industrial property, and to the Kneehill Housing Corporation. We are going to have probably the same dates. We had a bylaw come forward in the penalty bylaw where we have already outlined that October 31st will continue to be the date that everything is due. sorry about that.
No, it's quite all right.
Quickly check something. So I'll just do a quick summary because you guys kind of have already heard everything. And so this just summarizes the decisions that were made and how we're going to now go forward administratively. So typically, the requisitions are not taken into consideration within the annual budget process, as they are amounts which council does not have direct control over, in which the county is required to levy from ratepayers based on the requisition authority's direction. So we have already kind of discussed the Kneehill Housing and Alberta School Fund. So I won't go over that with you guys again, or do you want me to?
Perhaps, Ms. Nyman, if we could get you to go through that, because it just helps in terms of clarity for the
Yep.
ratepayers. As council, I think we understand pretty clearly
Yep.
where we're going, but I think to re-emphasize that for our ratepayers would be beneficial. So if you don't mind, if you want to just go through those in the presentation, that would be probably valuable.
Absolutely. So we'll
And
start.
thank you for that.
Oh, no problem. So I'll start with a summary. So the Kneehill Housing direction, we realized that the rates that were going to have to be levied this year were much larger than they have been in the past. So it was brought forward to you guys to be able to approve a withdrawal from the stabilization reserve to cover a large amount of what the increase is. For the Alberta School Fund, the province under levied us by $640,286, which means that we have to bill that out on top of what we would bill out for this year. So it was a huge increase. And then our motion seeks to approve that from the Revenue Stabilization Reserve, so the impacts on ratepayers aren't increased a lot this year. So those are the two major things.
So I guess
Oh, sorry, yep.
my question would be, so between the two of you, hopefully you can answer this. So in 2024, the education requisition, the change that we're seeing is the 343 over what 2023 was, but we're also having to allow for the 640 that they under levied. So in what we requisitioned last year, the change in the total amount between 23 and 24 is almost $1 million. 640 plus 343.
Through the chair, in addition, that 640 would actually have to be doubled in 2024 to collect the full amount that is due this year.
But if we hadn't, after having dealt with that 640 under levy from 2023, the net change from 2023 to 2024 is about $1 million.
That is correct.
Okay. All right, thank you. And then we've dealt with that other 640
That is
through
correct.
using the revenue stabilization.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Vobes.
And just for clarity, for the people listening, the funding for housing is not part of the county's operating budget, but the education portion is part of the operating budget. So the funding being removed, what? Were you gonna say something? No?
No, go ahead,
Oh,
finish.
okay. So the funding being removed from the reserves is to offset the impact of the requisition funding that would have been on residential and industry tax bills for both housing and education. Does that make sense?
Neither one of them are within the operating budget. They're all separate.
Oh, okay. Just, when I was reading this yesterday, it appeared, at least to me when I was reading it, that it was coming from the operating budget. That's why I was asking that question.
Through the chair, no, these are recommendations to be drawn out of the Revenue Stabilization Reserve, which has them separate from the core operating budget.
So school taxes are requisitioned then as well as the housing is, for clarity?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. Okay.
Councillor Penner, yes, please.
While we're on this, were we the only county in the province that they under levied? Because 640,286 is a lot of money.
Mr. Hogan?
So, through you, Mr. Chair, in response to that, Councillor Penner, we don't know the answer to that yet. We're going to be posing, as per council direction, there's some questions we're going to be posing back to the province on this. In researching this item and with the tax rate bylaw, part of the reason that we put it out is we were waiting for a legal opinion to make sure that the way we were doing this was the proper way. So we felt that was important as we went forward, because it is a weird way of you don't run into this, right, very often. But going through that process, we did find there is, and I don't want to come across as too optimistic about this, but I think there is some. We'll be asking those questions. We'll also be making a request, likely through the Reeve, around having to the minister to just come back and waive the overage. It was your mistake, do that. I'm not going to tell you that I have a large degree of optimism that's going to be successful, but when we pose those questions, we're going to try.
Go ahead, Councillor Forbes.
So then, just for clarity's sake for me, the increase that they gave to us, what percentage on the education? Because I did ask that. You put in for housing that it was a 253% increase. I asked at the March meeting what the increase for the education would be. Do you have that?
So if I guess we have at least one of the numbers. So if everything would have occurred in 2023 as it should have, like the right amount was requisitioned to begin with, then I think the increase we estimate is about 13%, 13, 14?
Through the chair, I believe it was 7% on the school tax.
7 on the school tax? So in total this year, when those are requisitions, the province tells us the amount of money to collect for school tax. And they're doing that based on throughout the province. That's not a number that Kneehill County chooses or influences or anything like that. So I'm going to round the number, but I believe in 2024, we're looking at about $5.5 million.
In the presentation of our last council meeting, they required us last year to requisition $4,589,607, and after the adjustment, it would have been $5,229,893. So if you took it, the 460,000, and divided it by the 4,589,607, it's about almost 14% that they, and it was $156 million of assessment that they missed somehow in their calculations. So it was significant, the amount of money that they just sort of helped themselves to. At the end of the day, I guess if they have access to the bank account and withdraw the money, it's kind of unfortunate that it happened that way. And I think it's reasonable, Mr. Hogan, what you suggested as a possibility. I think not only is it reasonable for us to ask for an accounting as to why it happened, and maybe ask the question how many other places it happened, but to suggest that, hey, it's your mistake, not ours, and perhaps some forgiveness might be nice. Anyway, that's a side discussion. It's pretty important to us because it has a pretty major impact. You know, if we had to do the 460 and the 460 and the 343, you know, we're talking $1.5 million change in what we're required to collect this year. That's huge dollars. So anyway, if there are no other questions, I would say go ahead.
Okay.
Ms. Nyman?
So basically, the annual budget determined the total amount of taxes to be levied on residents and business in the community for this budget year. The 2024 operating capital budget was passed on December 12 of 2023, and That requires $25,644,991 to be collected from ratepayers to maintain municipalities' operations. And then I just kind of have a breakdown that it's the same, like kind of where that all gets taxed from. And then I have a little breakdown here of what the ratepayers will be billed for this year for Kneehill housing, and then what we're taking from the reserve fund. So it just kind of shows how nice that is that we are going to be doing that. Yeah, and then for the Alberta fund, it's just the same thing, because you guys have moved to collect the under levy. It alleviates a lot of the financial pressure on ratepayers. And then I just have some information that was kind of presented to you just a little while ago by Marika. The impact of previous direction administration recommendations. So this is kind of the same thing. This just reiterates, I'm sorry, Carolyn, it's page 4. Okay, yeah, so this is the information that presented before on the assessment changes. And it just shows that mill rate changes that Marika touched on before. And then, so my chart looks a little different than what Marika presented. I just have a little bit more information on the ratepayer impacts. So it's the one at the bottom there, and it just kind of shows the predictions of what we think the dollar value will be based on the changes in the mill rate. So for an acreage, it shows 146.67 is our estimate. Hamlet is 62.86, farm is 70.88, and non-residential is 111.77. So these figures were presented during the March 26th requisition report. Subsequent to that report, additional information was received related to the requisitions.
Councillor McGee.
I'll just interrupt you while you're on this chart. I just wanted to emphasize that people, please pay attention to the assessment columns, because we're basing that on the assessment dollar that's there. So farmland is assessed at $30,000 per quarter. We're saying if an acreage was assessed at $350,000, yours might be different than that, so therefore your total will look different than that.
Yes.
Just so that each person knows that this is just based on kind of an average number that we put onto the chart for your awareness, but please know that the totals are not exact to your particular property.
Okay, thank you for that. So in the note that you have there, you say that, and when I was reading this report, I noticed that there was significant change in the actual total impact. So can you explain kind of the additional information that we received? And I know part of it is the actual assessment numbers and the inflated value that were in those, but can you just help me understand a little bit? You know, we were sort of anticipating 170 kind of range in the last meeting, and now it's sitting at mid 140s on average acreage. And so can you just give me some clarity there, please?
Absolutely. So when those numbers were calculated for the March 26th meeting, we didn't have the specific breakdown of how that assessment shifted and where they missed the assessment in the under levy last year. So between then and now, I got a little bit better breakdown, which actually showed it was within non-residential. And so the way I'd had to calculate it sort of had to assume an average impact across all tax classes. And so when we got that further information, it actually puts the impact more on the non-residential than the residential properties. So that's where those numbers have shifted. It's favorable for residential and not as favorable for,
The non-res.
yes.
Okay. Thank you for that. Mr. Hogan.
Just to build on that a little bit indirectly, and this is more for information, we've talked about the 5-to-1 ratio and how that needs to be maintained legislatively. Just for clarity, that 5-to-1 ratio applies to your municipal taxes only. That does not include your requisitions.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other questions, or are we at a point where we can allow Ms. Nyman to move on? We're almost there, I think.
Yeah, almost there. The approval of this tax rate bylaw ensures that administration can issue the tax notices which provide the total taxation revenues as shown in the operating budget for the county. Second and third reading for this bylaw will be requested at April 26th council meeting. Our options for this bylaw today is to give first reading to the 2024 tax rate bylaw. You can amend the budget resulting tax rate, except for information. So we're just bringing forward the first reading, and then if you guys have any information that you would like brought forward on the 26th, we can do that as well. For the second and third.
Any questions before we move to suggested motions? Deputy Reeve Woodstock.
Thanks, Reeve King. Just for my clarity, the non-residential taxes, well, the requisition on the education for non-residential, is that a larger number than it is for acreage and hamlet taxes? I guess residential taxes. Is that correct?
Through the chair, yes. Those non-residential numbers are based on $100,000 of assessment based on 2023 numbers. It's just with non-residential properties, there's too big of a variation in what their values are, and so we don't have an average that really works well because of the broadness, whereas when you kind of look at acreages, we can come up with an average value for an acreage or a quarter section. So yes, it is significantly higher on non-residential.
So ultimately, I guess where I'm going with this is the revenue stabilization funds that we are using to help mitigate some of these huge increases that were going to happen without using revenue stabilization. That also helped the non-res taxes, or that also went into helping the non-res side, correct?
Through the chair, yes, that's correct.
Okay.
It has to apply to all tax classes to do what we're doing.
Yeah, I kind of gathered that, but I just wanted to make it clear in my head one last time that we are using revenue stabilization to help mitigate taxes on the non-residential side also. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for that clarity. Any further questions or discussion? So we have a number of motions that we need to make to allow for the draws from the Revenue Stabilization Fund, and then we're looking to do first reading of this bylaw 1897. So what is the wish of council? Councillor Forbes.
I'll do the first one, that council approve the draw from the revenue stabilization reserve in the amount of $220,024 to fund the increase in Kneehill housing requisition for 2024.
Okay, thank you for that. So we have a motion that we approve the draw from the Revenue Stabilization Reserve in the amount of $220,024 to fund the increase in the Kneehill housing requisition for 2024. Any further discussion or questions on that motion? We're all clear on what we're doing and why? Okay, if you're ready, I'm going to ask the question. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. Councillor Penner.
I'd make the motion that council approve a draw from the Revenue Stabilization Reserve in the amount of $640,286 to fund the 2023 under levy related to the Alberta School Fund.
Okay, thank you for that. So the motion that's on the floor is that council approve a draw from the Revenue Stabilization Reserve in the amount of $640,286 to fund the 2023 under levy to the related to the Alberta School Fund. So we know the reason we're doing this is there was a miscalculation in the amount that was levied from the county last year, and the motion that we're making is just to take away the impact of trying to get that 640 from last year in this year's tax and requisition bills that will be sent out. Okay, we're clear. Any further questions? Deputy Reeve Whitstock.
Thanks, Reeve King. So if the province actually fesses up to their mistake and says, yeah, it was our mistake, and you are not on the hook for the $640,286, this motion will be irrelevant, retracted, or whatever, if the province decides to cut us a break.
Well, if the province was that benevolent in their treatment of us, I assume we'd see a motion that might say we want to put that money back in So it's 9:46, and I'm going to call the council meeting back to order. And Councillor McGee, you had a question.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to check to see if maybe we need to have a motion for the additions we would like to have to the letter to the province regarding the error they had made that we are now having to make these motions around. I just think the clarity of how this happened and whether or not they will take ownership and maybe forgive this amount would be really helpful. Looking to administration to see if a direction is enough or if you'd like to see that as a motion.
Mr. Hogan.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't know that we technically need it. It's part of the scope of what we've done, but what we've been directed to do before. But it definitely wouldn't hurt because council hasn't specifically directed this thing. So if having a motion in there where it was known that we were specifically going to request this, definitely wouldn't hurt anything.
So I'd like to make the motion that we request that in the letter to the province about the error, we request them considering waiving the $640, $286. So as you have it printed there, it looks good.
Okay, questions? Councillor Benner.
I would like us to really emphasize it's 640,286. If you just see the 640, 286 sounds like two different numbers, and at all times really emphasize the hundreds of thousands.
Thank you, I agree.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. So the motion by Councillor McGee is that council direct administration to request that the province waive the $640,286 error in the education school funding requisition made by the province in 2023. So I would like to maybe clarify that it relates to the 2023 requisition. If that's okay with you, Councillor McGee?
Yes, I appreciate that.
Okay. All right, so we have the motion on the, Deputy Reeve Whitstock, sorry.
Thanks, Reeve King. Actually, yes, that is, I agree with that motion, but that's also affecting our 24 budget. That's $640 or $640,283. Plus whatever increase the province is throwing at us again, which is 300 and I don't have it here in front of me, but 300 and some $1,000. So it's not just nice of them to turn that around. It would be great of them to turn that around because we're being hit by close to $1 million this year just because of their mistake from last year.
Okay, I appreciate that clarification and emphasis. Any further comment or discussion? If not, I'm going to ask the question. All those in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you. All right. So the next item on our agenda, and we're going to fit this one in before our delegation comes, is 7.1, Ratepayer Evenings. And welcome, Ms. Anderson. Christine, welcome today, and anytime you are ready.
Thank you, Council. Good morning. I'm here to present the request for decision for our annual Ratepayer Evenings. So just a little bit of background, Kneehill County annually hosts public engagement with residents through our Ratepayer Evenings. The events provide a family-friendly opportunity for residents and ratepayers to come and engage with council and staff, ask questions, and provide their feedback. Facilitation is like a trade fair. Each department has its booth with department-specific information. A catered supper, kids' activities, and prize draws are also provided. New for 2024, we want to do a printed take-home document for residents, including some year-in-review stats, some did-you-knows, that kind of thing that they can take home and read at their leisure. And we also do the Ratepayer Night feedback survey, which helps gauge the event's success and determines potential improvements for future events. So these events have been held in different locations throughout the county since they began in 2019. In 2019, we did Trochu and Acme, and we had just over 100 residents at both. In 2022, we did Torrington and Carbon, and we had 148 residents. In 2023, we did Swalwell and Wimborne with 178 attending. So we're definitely trending up with attendance. Some new options for 2024 that we haven't hosted at would be Three Hills, Sunny Slope potentially, though that may be a challenge with attendance and catering, but we could look into that. And potentially Huxley as well, but again, might be a bit of a challenge. If council wishes, we could repeat previous locations, and we are suggesting that we host the meetings early in June of 2024. Financially, there's $15,000 budgeted for both these events, so $7,500 each. So council options would be council approves to host 2 Ratepayer Evenings in 2024, host 1 Ratepayer Evening in 2024, or direct administration to bring back more options.
Okay, thank you for that. Any questions related to the information provided by Ms. Anderson? And Ratepayer Evenings, Councillor Penner.
Just a feedback, I love the idea of having something to give to them, a summary of the evening kind of thing, of the display boards or the taxes, whatever. I like that idea. Great idea.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other questions or comments? I'm assuming they were in favor of holding 2, but Councillor Forbes, go ahead.
Yes, and I also do. I would like to see it happen in Sunny Slope. Even though these are smaller communities, I don't want them to feel like they're being left out and that just because they're small, they don't count. Everybody counts. Anyone who goes and votes counts, in my opinion, so it shouldn't matter the size of the community that we're going to.
And through the chair, absolutely, I agree with you. I think the only issue there might just be the facility in itself, the kitchen. It's something I'd have to explore with the caterer. We could get creative, but definitely look into it. Okay.
Thank you for those comments. I know the Swalwell, or the Sunny Slope Hall, has made some significant improvements in the last few years, and it's not a bad facility for sure.
No.
It's a good facility. Any further discussion or comment? Councillor Penner?
If not, nobody else wants to add anything to it, I would make the motion that council approves to host the Ratepayer Evenings in Three Hills and Sunny Slope in 2024, here right away.
Okay, so the motion is that council approves hosting Ratepayer Evenings in Three Hills and Sunny Slope in 2024. So, any further comment or discussion around the motion? Councillor Forbes.
Can it be a friendly amendment to adding June as the month we're doing it in?
In June 2024? And that was the suggestion in the request for decision. Yeah. Okay, any further question or comment? I'm not seeing any, so I'm going to ask the question. All those in favor? And that is also carried unanimously. Thank you.
Perfect.
And thank you, Ms. Anderson. Appreciate you coming and sharing with us this morning, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your day, now that you're not stressed out about coming to council. Perhaps we have 5 minutes here, and I think we could deal with the next item, which is the 2024 parade season, which is 7.2 in our agenda. And we'll put a little pressure on Ms. Vanderkoel, and if you would, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I bring you today agenda item 7.2, the parade season. This is an item we review annually. It includes the parade schedule in which council typically attends. The recommended motion is to receive this for information, but furthermore, it's for council to be aware of the dates and for council to determine which events they would like to attend. Administration will make sure a clean vehicle and candy will be provided. If you are available and want to attend, you can just let me know. So Linden is June 1st, Carbon is June 8th, which is the same weekend as FCM. Acme is June 15th, and Trochu and Drumheller are July 1st, and Three Hills is July 13th.
Okay, thank you for that. As is my usual habit, I likely will attend the Trochu parade. Councillor Phobes.
I'd also like to attend the Three Hills and Trochu.
Deputy Reeve Woodstock.
Yeah, you can scribble me in for Linden on June the 1st and Acme on June the 15th. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor McGee.
I'm not available. Sorry to say, so FCM for Carbon is where I usually go, and I also like going to Drumheller, and I am away for family engagement that weekend.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Cunningham.
So I am more than happy to attend Three Hills July 13th, and Councillor Phobes and I will try to resume our title that we won last year. Just one question that I had that I know staff will not look kindly on me. Just curious, has the county ever done a float as opposed to just a vehicle with a councillor in it? Like, I've seen other municipalities do that, so I was just curious whether that's something that the county's done in the past or would consider doing.
As long as I have been here, there has never been a float.
The 1 year Faye and I just decorated our car in Carbon. You can go with a theme. If they have a theme, we just decided we would participate a little bit and put a cowboy hat and whatever else on the vehicle.
I was looking more like at a staff involvement with it as opposed to like, yeah, because that's what Councillor Phobes and I did. We decorated up flat deck trailer and stuff, but I just wondered, like, you know, because you do see like the town of Three Hills does put one where the staff's involved. So just curious on that.
Councillor Penner.
I guess it's a little easier when it's in town, but when we're doing the distance, but I mean, it's a great idea, you know? I think just being visible. My question was, I'm hoping to be available. I can't tell you right now, Carolyn, which ones I'll be at, but if, say in Carbon, I think it's just more visible that the vehicle is there, and I know it might be hard on the peace officers to attend, just with scheduling and the shortage of that. Is it possible that just a staff member can drive the vehicle? Just being present means a lot, I think, in these communities.
Mr. Hogan.
It's something that we can check into.
Okay. So for now, we have some indication from members of council which parades they would be available for, and basically suggestions around if council is not available, maybe staff. I know our peace officers have been relatively good at showing up at parades as well. So, Councillor Phobes.
Because there are no weird questions, but I was asked what the budget for the parade, what do you have budgeted for parade expenses? Because last year, some of the things you put in the bin were not candy related, and they loved that. So that's why the question was, is how much do you have expense? Can it be not always all candy? So
Actually, we have purchased beach balls to throw out with the candy. I'd have to go, the budget for all parades events are in different budget items. I'd have to go back and get it through, but I can provide you that information.
Okay, keeping in mind we have a engagement here shortly, so Councillor Penner.
Just a little background, we did give direction to administration a few years ago to put some of that kind of stuff in, whether it's pencils, balloons, whatever they come up with.
okay, perfect.
Councillor Christie.
Just a comment, I'll be in Trochu on July the 1st, but I'll be helping the seniors get to the parade, so.
Yes.
Okay,
I keep candy just for your little area.
We should throw some back at you.
okay, so I'm looking for a motion to just basically accept for information, I guess.
Go ahead, Karen.
So moved.
Okay, thank you for that. So we have a motion that council receive for information the 2024 parade season report. All those in favor? That's carried unanimously. All right, we are 1 minute late, so we are going to quickly jump to our delegation, which is the Southern Alberta Energy from Waste Association. And Mr. Hogan, or who's introducing this one? Looks like they're joining us via video.
Paul, can you hear us on our end?
I can, so yes.
Perfect. You can share your video.
If you'll let me, I will.
Oh, oh dear.
Don't you love technology?
I love technology today. Oh, my goodness. The stress in my life. Where am I? Where is my? I cannot find my mouse to do this. Come on. No, my mouse is here. I just, I tried to get it onto the second screen. Oh, here we go. Okay. All right. So, Paul, how do I make your video?
If you give me control of the screen and give me share screen, I'll put up the PowerPoint.
Okay. How do I do that?
Make a presenter.
Did I do it? Where
No.
did you see it?
Go down. There you are.
Oh, perfect. Okay, thank you, everyone.
Okay. Let's see if I can make it work. Can you see that?
No.
Okay.
Yeah? Oh dear. What did you do?
No, it's not. Okay. I guess we'll, if we can't get that, I don't want to hold council up. I can go through it myself, and then you guys can ask me questions at the end. Would that work, Mr. Chair?
Okay,
What
Paul,
wish to do?
since we're having these issues with presentation, perhaps we'll just introduce ourselves as council, and then if you want to go ahead with your presentation, then we can do that. So I'm going to ask Deputy Reeve Whitstock. He's also online, so he'll just introduce himself, and then Councillor Penner, if you would.
Morning, Paul, Sherry, good to have you along. Hopefully the presentation shows up on screen here.
If not, it will be emailed to admin.
That'd be great. Councillor Penner.
Good morning, Debbie Penner, Division 2.
Faye McGee, Division 1. Carrie Phobes, Division 4.
Ken King, Division 7.
Good morning, Laura Lee Michelle Cunningham, Division 5.
Wade Christie, good morning, and Division 6.
Okay, Paul, if you want to just introduce yourself perhaps, and then you could go ahead with your presentation if you wish.
Of course I wish, yes. So my name is Paul Ryan. I am the vice chair and the project lead for the Saywell project. I am one of the charter members of Saywell, and I am an appointed representative for the municipal district of Bighorn. And in the shadows is our administrator, Sherry Poole, in case you guys have some administrative questions that I will not be able to answer. And with that, I shortened the presentation for you, Mr. Chair, because a lot of the information you guys already had, and you don't need to see maps or anything, but I think you want more importantly to know where we are in the process. So the project has always had the same goal, which was to the research and implementation of energy recovery from non-recyclable waste materials, and to get away from our long-term reliance on landfills. Saywell has not varied from that. A lot of people believe that with energy from waste projects, it reduces recycling, but in fact, the studies that were done by Solid Waste Association of North America found that any of the jurisdictions that had energy from waste actually increased their recycling because they were able to pull a lot of metals and ferrous and non-ferrous metals out of the waste stream. We did a waste stream characterization to, if you're going to try to manage something, you have to, first you got to know what it is. And in our footprint of Saywell, the content of the municipal solid waste is pretty much the same as it is across Canada. There's a lot of material in there that people believe could be recycled, but in fact it's not recyclable. Any paper that has food products on them or plastic with food products on them are rejected for plastics recycling because they contaminate the process. The technology that was settled on after a great deal of engineering work was thermal treatment of waste. So commonly known as incineration, but it's when you say incineration, people picture these giant black belching smokestacks that some of the anti-energy from waste people like to put around. But actually energy from waste facilities don't have giant belching smokestacks. And a lot of them are actually built into urban areas, urban landscapes, because the emissions are so clean on them that you really don't see anything coming out of the stack. So we did what every government organization has to do before we started. We did a feasibility study because we can't do anything without a feasibility study. And we looked at how much waste was out there, the different technologies, how the waste was collected and transported, the ability to recover heat and generate electricity. We looked at the air emissions and our control options. And 1/3 of the cost of an energy from waste facility nowadays is dedicated to air emissions. And they can now run energy from waste, thermal energy from waste facilities with emissions that are actually clean or cleaner than natural gas. Then we looked at the permitting requirements, and then, of course, the capital and operating costs. We then did a project development plan, and we actually followed it, which I think is great because I think a lot of you that have been around for a while know that you create a plan and then the plan changes. But we actually stuck to the plan, and we went through a regulatory requirements review, the siting plan, the communications plan, procurement plan. We did an initial business plan. And the initial business plan, that was a go, no-go point to have a look at it and said, well, you know, can we actually do this? And then that led us to do a detailed business plan. It's quite a thick document. The detailed business plan and the waste stream characterization and the member waste stream current costs. All those documents are confidential, but they're available to any of our members. All we need is a request from council, a council resolution requesting them as confidential documents. And that way we can share them with municipalities. We looked at the governance model because if you're going to do this, currently SEWA is incorporated under the Alberta Government Societies Act. However, in order to execute the plan, we would need to have a municipally controlled corporation. So our lawyers, Brownlee and Municipal Affairs, got together and they came up with a governance model that was agreed to by the province of Alberta and also agreed to by our general membership at an annual general meeting. So we currently have a municipally controlled corporation that has been registered, and it's sitting on John McDonald's desk, or sorry, in his bookcase, in his office at Brownlee in Edmonton. Then we did the siting analysis. So this is all great, but where are you going to put it? What makes the best sense about where you're going to put it? So we engaged the University of Alberta because they're experts in logistics and center of mass haul. And they looked at the different available sites. We had 6 sites that were made available to us by our members. And then they evaluated the sites, and one was distance, trucking, and the other one was the carbon footprint of it. And then we had a life cycle analysis that was done. Our engineers, HDR, did it along with the Pembina Institute, and they did a third-party review. And the data was verified by Oil and Gas Sustainability. And then the Pembina Institute produced a report on it. And what they basically said is that the project, as it sits now, with all of the information that was provided to them by our engineers and then peer reviewed, is that they've reduced greenhouse gases by about 230,000 tons a year, or 7 million tons over the life of the project. It is based on 300,000 tons per year. The potential output is about 50 megawatts of electricity and 1 million tons of processed steam. And processed steam can be used for many different things: district heat, food processing, and also it can be used then to condense the steam back down to water and recycle it back to the facility. So we reduce, it's a closed loop system, so it reduces our requirement to bring in new water. The engineers, HDR, have been working with us since the beginning of the project, and they're well recognized around the world as leaders in waste management and logistics. And then they developed the expression of interest, which we then sent out to the marketplace. So far, we've spent about $1.5 million on engineering reports, and our member support is about $2 million. So we've got about $3.5 million invested in this so far. Then there's a how do you pay for it? So municipal infrastructure generally is amortized over 20 years. Waste energy facilities have a 30 to 50-year lifespan. And also, it doesn't have the post-closure costs like landfills do. So where you have to look after the landfill for 35 to 50 years because they off-gas or they leak into the groundwater. And there's a lot of engineering costs, at least with energy from waste facilities. Municipalities can avoid that long-term liability. In terms of funding, it could be considered similar to regional water or wastewater because it's regional waste management. And then there's a utility model that shares cost over many municipalities. And another option is a public-private partnership, which is where we are very close to right now. And then, of course, there's the private sector that comes in and they own it, they design it, they build it, they operate it, and the municipalities really are just customers. That is the least desirable model because there are some of those in the U.S. that did not work out very well because the municipalities really have no control over cost. So if we were to go out and borrow money on the market, and I want you to bear in mind that these are 2021 numbers. With debt financing, the tipping fee would be around $91 a ton. If we were able to get an interest-free loan from the higher levels of government, in other words, we like your project, we'll give you some money, but we want it back. And interest-free loans from higher levels of government are not unusual for large infrastructure projects. It would bring the tipping fee down to around $57 a ton. So the difference between borrowing the money and having the money is about close to half of your tipping fee at $97. And of course, if you manage to get a utility model like they do for like Calgary Green Line, where the feds put in $1.2 billion to save 40,000 tons of GHGs a year, or water, wastewater like they have for Vancouver, Halifax, Montreal, where the government actually provided the funding for it, you'd be down to around $5 a ton. And I don't think any of us are naive enough to believe that we'll get that kind of money from either level of government. Then we went to the site selection. The site that was selected was Newell County at their landfill, because it's already a brownfield, it's already a landfill, it's already approved for municipal waste management, and it's far away from residential areas. It's close to provincial highways and federal highways, so it's at the corner of number 1, and I don't remember the numbered highway for the province that goes by there, but at least it's roads that are already built and maintained by somebody else. And it's far enough away that it's not going to bother anybody. And when we made it known publicly that there was the potential for an energy from waste facility to go there, there was no public pushback on it of any kind. So it seemed that the recommendation by the University of Alberta to choose Newell County was the right one. So then we moved forward to get in a position where we're going to find someone to work with. We thought it was a good idea. Does anybody else think it's a good idea? So we went out on the what's called Merck's Canada, which is a site for a project this big where we had to put it. We did that in 2021, and the technology was to be commercially demonstrated. In other words, we need to be able to look at your emissions. We need to be able to look at your operating costs. And so there were 3 that came back. One was Covanta. They're the ones that operate the newest energy from waste facility in Canada, which is in the Durham-York region. They also operate the one in Burnaby that's been operating now for 30 years. Another one was Hitachi Anova. And Hitachi is a large multinational corporation. They operate mostly in Europe and in the United States. They do not have any operating facilities in Canada. And the last but not least was Suez, and Suez is the company that operates the energy from waste facility in Swan Hills. And the energy from waste, or sorry, it's not energy from waste facility, the incinerator at Swan Hills, which is scheduled to close because it can't be upgraded to meet modern emission standards. So all of the 3 that came back were well-known, well-accredited. Our engineers then went through an evaluation process of their proposals. They applied a normal template to it for evaluation and scoring processes. And the company that came out on top was HZI, Aconia. And so that is who we are currently negotiating with. We have a letter of intent that was approved by the board and signed by Sewa and Hitachi. And we've spent the last year and a half now negotiating a memorandum of understanding with them. And just to put that in, it takes a long time, but to put it in perspective, the city of Edmonton just announced that they're going to build an energy from waste facility. And they spent 3 years negotiating the memorandum of understanding. So we are now at the point where we have a draft memorandum of understanding. HZI then made a presentation to our executive to outline the details and the financial details of their proposal. We are now waiting on clarification of some of the information that they gave us. And the executive meeting is on Friday. And on Friday, the executive is going to review that. And then they're going to make a recommendation to the board. And that is going to be, I believe, on the 27th of this month. Last Friday of this month is when the board will then be making a decision on whether or not to go with HZI or to entertain proposals from some of the smaller energy from waste technology vendors to look at sub-regional facilities instead of one giant regional facility. So that recommendation has not been written yet, but it will be written after Friday's executive meeting, and then it'll go to the board for a final decision. And I'll email this presentation to your staff because there's some details in there that I didn't touch because it's hard to explain without having the slides in front of you. And that's what I have for you.
Thank you for that, Paul. Are there questions for Paul from council? Councillor Phobes.
What are the environmental benefits of waste to energy compared to landfilling?
That is a really, really good question. So there's a thing called the National Inventory Report that is done by Environment Canada. And it notes the 3 top contributors of greenhouse gases in Canada. And landfills are responsible for 28% of the methane produced in Canada. And methane is, depending on which scientist and which day it is about 20 times worse than CO2. So if you have an energy from waste facility, you do not have the methane generation that off gases from municipal landfills with municipal solid waste. And so with the SAWA project, 230,000 tons a year of greenhouse gases will be eliminated, or 7 million tons over the life of the project. And that's not chump change. That's a lot of greenhouse gases. And actually, it begs the question, why is the province and the federal government not all over this? Right now, they're focused on other shiny answers like hydrogen and carbon capture and storage and things like that. But it really reduces the amount of methane that's generated.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Phobes?
Sorry. My next question is what role does SAWA play in promoting sustainable waste management practices?
That's a difficult one to answer because we have the opportunity for large-scale recyclers to co-locate with energy from waste facilities where you, it's kind of like the circular economy where you have the waste goes in, the stuff that can be recycled is peeled off and it goes to a recycling facility that uses the energy and steam from the energy from waste facility to process the plastics. And then the stuff that cannot be recycled goes into the energy from waste facility to actually generate the energy to run the recycling outfits. So it's pretty circular when you look at it that way. And that is the way the new energy from waste facilities are going in Europe. They're putting in, I guess you could call it an eco park, where you co-locate solar and recycling and energy from waste facility in the same area to make it easy and very inexpensive to operate them because you're getting the electricity that you're actually part of the generation process.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Anyone else have any other questions? Councillor Penner.
Paul, this has been in the process for some time, numerous years, and I know you've had to oblige by all the requirements and stuff, and which take a long time. I guess we'd like to see this sooner than later, like by changing the way we're thinking of doing it and whatnot. Is this going to continue to lag it, and people lose interest? Is there anything as a municipality that we can do to speed it up?
Yes, there is. And you're quite correct. It's before I agreed to actually participate in this project, I looked at a number of plays, and they were all in the US and a couple in Canada that were trying to build regional facilities with multi-jurisdictions. And so depending on how you look at it, we got to be between 35 and 50 municipalities involved in this. And you can imagine what it's like to stick handle that at changes in councils, at elections, changes in administration, changes in philosophies, the education process when we have provincial elections, and that slows us down quite a bit. And then there's, of course, the actual processes, doing engineering reports. So to do a waste stream characterization, it takes 2 years because you got to do it over 2 years and all seasons. But I think the best thing we could get from our members, one is to stay alongside the project because we're almost there. And the other one would be letters of support and talking to your own MLA. I mean, for Newell County, the MLA happens to be Danielle Smith. So that's one place to lobby, but she's the premier. So it's whenever you get the opportunity to talk to an MLA, would be to promote the project and ask the province what they're doing to help support us. Because I can tell you right now, we have not gotten any financial support from the current provincial government, even though I was on the Premier's radio show numerous times about this project. So it's a matter of lobbying. And if you can do that as a municipality, I think that would be great.
Councillor Spinner.
By putting it in Newell County, do you feel you will have adequate feedstock for it to be a reliable energy source?
So, okay, it's not my county. I'm in the MD of Bighorn. When we did the first feasibility study, there was 365,000 tons of municipal solid waste in the Sewa footprint, which is more than enough. And I think most people don't know, but if you look at where municipalities are sending their waste now, municipalities vote with their checkbook. You know, everybody likes to put solar panels on roofs and everything, but the reality is they vote with their checkbook. So the waste from, say, in my area that I can speak to, Banff and Lake Louise, their waste trucks travel 850-kilometer round trip to go to a landfill at dried meat because the tipping fees are cheap. And one of the challenges that we have is that in Alberta we have a lot of land. I remember one councillor from one jurisdiction that I won't name saying, well, you know, we don't need energy from waste, we'll just dump the garbage in another coulee. And so there is that challenge, but the volumes of waste are out there. And if we were to sign an MOU with HZI, one of the first tasks is for us to go out and then verify the waste volumes and what municipalities are willing to provide them. Because if you don't have enough waste, then you won't be able to keep the fires burning to generate the electricity to pay the bills. It's as simple as that. So we are not even looking at industrial waste. We only looked at municipal solid waste, but the amount of industrial waste that's out there is, it's incredible how much there is. And then there's also the medical waste, which has no home right now because the facility that was accepting that closed down and they're shipping it someplace to the States right now, as far as I understand. But the waste volumes are out there. But in order for the project to move forward, we would have to actually confirm the waste volumes and then get a letter of intent from the municipalities that says that, yes, if you build that facility and under these conditions, we would provide you with the waste. So it has not been confirmed since we did the first feasibility study, but at that time there was 365,000 tons available in our footprint.
Councillor Penner.
Okay, thank you for that. My reason was asking about Newell was it's quite a ways away from the large municipalities, but I guess if the tipping fee is a reasonable rate and people will sign up for it, I guess that's going to be the hard question. Where do you put that tipping fee at to encourage people to haul the garbage there?
That's really the only question, isn't it? And just for your information, there's a lot of private sector waste management companies in Calgary that drive right past Newell and go all the way down to Medicine Hat, down to Red Cliff with their waste. So you're correct. It's on the tipping fee. If it's cheap enough, they'll go there. And if it's a long-term commitment, they'll go there. But private sector, you know, they work real hard at competing with municipal landfills and actually undercut their prices most of the time. That's why they're going down to Red Cliff.
Councillor Forbes.
And while you're on that topic, could you tell me what type of waste material are suitable for energy recovery?
So when we looked at the initial project, one of the needs that we had was that the energy from waste facility would be able to process all municipal solid waste. So that's basically what people put in their black bins or in their bags, and it's mixed waste. So obviously metals are not suitable, but there's a high quantity of metals that are in municipal solid waste that would actually get peeled out of there and sold as a revenue stream. But they're suitable for just about anything, and you can engineer them to accept hazardous waste if the organization wants to go down that path. But the minute you start talking about hazardous waste, a lot of people get very, very upset and concerned about the emissions from them, and rightly so. But it will accept all municipal solid waste, and that is the feedstock that we had our engineers consider in the pre-design of the facility. Does it adequately answer your question?
That's good, thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions for Paul regarding this project and its current state? Okay, I'm not seeing any. So thank you, Paul, for being with us today and presenting. And we will look forward to receiving your presentation through our staff. If you would email that, that would be greatly appreciated. And we very much appreciate you taking the time to be here today. So thank you.
Great, thank you very much, everybody. Have a wonderful day, and I will make sure you get a copy. I'll get a copy to your admin as soon as I'm offline here.
Okay, thank you very much again, and have a great day.
Okay, and look forward to the agenda package from our administration too for the meeting at the end of the month, because that's a decision-making point.
Okay, that's good information to have. Thank you.
Bye for now.
Okay. Bye-bye. All right, are we good to continue? All right, so we are on to 7.3, which is the community grants round 1. And again, Ms. Vanderkool, I believe this is you. Oh, Mr. Hogan.
Just if I may, Mr. Chair, before to go back to the previous, for council's information, Kneehill County contributes about $4,000 a year to that SAWA project.
That's on a per cap basis, correct?
It is. That was just a bit of information I wanted to add as we closed up that presentation.
And that's a voluntary membership that we have in the Waste Association, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right. Are we ready then? 7.3, community grants. Again, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Today I bring you Agenda 7.3, Round 1 Community Grants. Round 1 Community Grant application deadline was on March 6, 2024. There were a total of 6 eligible applications that received a total amount requested for, oh my gosh, trying to do 2 things at one time. Oh, yeah. There were a total of 6 eligible applications received, and the total amount requested for round 1 is $20,139.50. This year we have budgeted $30,000 for this grant program, which has 2 rounds of applications annually. This program used to have $50,000 budgeted, but last year, you remember, we updated our grant program and we moved $20,000 to the new Rural Hall Capital Grant funding. If you awarded every application today in round 1, council would still have $9,860.50 left for round 2. So I will now just read through all the applications, and as I review them, council can ask questions. So the first application is the Three Hills Soccer Association. They're seeking funding to upgrade their portable soccer goal nets. Their total project cost is $4,000. They are requesting $2,000 in funding. The county has supported them previously. In 2013, the county provided $1,500 to assist in constructing washrooms at the soccer fields. The second application today is the Linden and District Agriculture Society. They are seeking funding to purchase a new snow blade to facilitate efficient snow removal along the Linden Nursing Home pathway. Their total project cost is $5,100. They are requesting $2,550 in funding. The county has supported them in the past. In 2010, the county provided $10,000 to go towards the construction of the pathway. In 2014, the county provided $5,000 to purchase a barbecue, and in 2017, the county provided $5,000 to go towards shed upgrades. The third application is the Huxley Legion branch. The Huxley Legion is looking for funding to purchase a defibrillator for the Huxley Hall. Their project cost is $2,600. They are requesting $1,300 in funding. The county has provided them support in the past. In 2019, the county provided $1,843.80 to install a flagpole at the hall. Next is the Three Hills Gymnastics Club. They're looking for funding to purchase new competitive suits and an air mat. Their project cost is $4,349. They are requesting $2,174.50 in funding. The county has provided them support in the past. In 2014, the county provided $5,000 for gymnastics equipment. Also applying is the Linden Benevolent Society. They're looking for funding for window replacement. Their project cost is $15,000. They're requesting $7,500 in funding. The county has provided them support in the past. In 2013, the county provided them with $5,000 to upgrade their kitchen. In 2016, the county provided them $5,000 to upgrade their dining rooms. And most recently, the county has provided them $7,500 in 2022 to replace floors in the kitchen and paint the common area. The last application today is the Kneehill Adult Learning Society. They're looking for funding to assist in the cost of minor renovations to their office space. Their project cost is $9,230. They are requesting $4,615 in funding. The county has provided this organization with funding in the past. In 2014, the county provided them with $5,000 to renovate office for wheelchair access.
Okay, thank you for that. Are there any questions regarding the applications for grant funding or clarification that's needed regarding the applications or application? Councillor Phobes, please.
The Linden Benevolent Society, that is a long-term care facility, correct? Do you know if it's for profit or non-profit?
I do not know the correct answer to that, and I don't believe it's long-term care in the sense that they have like a nursing home type thing. I think it's just like a lodge where seniors go to.
Oh, okay.
Okay, any other questions or clarification requested? Councillor Cunningham?
Just a question on the Kneehill Adult Learning. I'm assuming that they rent their space, so just wondering, does the owner of that space provide any upgrades or updates to the facility, or is it all on Kneehill Adult Learning to provide those?
I do not know what their rental agreement is with them, but they, it is a private individual. It's not a municipally owned facility, so they are eligible. They meet the eligibility requirements.
Any other questions or clarification requested? And I guess the end result of, if there's no more questions, we will be pulling each of us individually to see where we stand on each of the applications. And so, are we prepared at this point to do that? That's, I guess, what I'm looking for is we've got our questions answered and we're prepared to move ahead. All right, so we're gonna go, Councillor Phobes, yeah, absolutely.
Because I'm just sitting in a place right now with the Linden one. I'm just wondering if it's feasible to have it as 5,000 instead of the $7,500 instead. I just see them upgrading buildings, and I know it's for the residents that live in our area, but I'm thinking sometimes this is going to open a door for a lot of these guys to become societies so that they can get their facilities improved.
I believe there's something in our policy, and I'm just looking through the policy that says it's all or nothing. I don't know if we changed that or not.
I think that's been our past approach, is that rather than adjust an application, we either say yes or no to it. And one of the disadvantages, I think, to somebody like both the Kneehill Adult Learning and the Linden Benevolent Society not taking advantage of the opportunity to present to us is we really can't get additional information that might help us in making our decision. And so that does put them in a little bit of a offside position as far as being able to make that decision. So go ahead, Ms. Vanderkoop.
Mr. Chair, in our policy 5.2, grant funding will be approved in full amount requested or not approved at all.
Thank you for that clarification. All right, are we then at a point where we're prepared to go ahead? All right, so we are going to start with the Three Hills Soccer Association request to upgrade their portable soccer goal nets. And Deputy Reeve Whitstock, since you're the farthest away, that's a yes, thank you. Councillor Penner,
Yes.
Councillor McGee,
Yes.
Councillor Phobes,
Yes.
I'm a yes. Councillor Cunningham
I'm a yes.
and Councillor Christie.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. We will then move on to the Linden and District Ag Society request for $22,550 for a purchase of a new snow blade. And I am going to start with you, Councillor Christie.
Yes.
Councillor Cunningham,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. Councillor Phobes,
Yes.
Councillor McGee,
Yes.
Councillor Penner,
Yes.
and Deputy Reeve Woodstock. He's a yes. Thumbs up. Okay, the next request comes from the Huxley Legion. Request is to purchase a defibrillator for the Huxley Hall. Their request is for $1,300. And I am going to start with you, Councillor Cunningham.
I'm 100% yes, and I hope they never have to use it.
And I'm a yes.
I'm a yes.
Yes.
For sure, yes.
Deputy Reeve is thumbs up, and Councillor Christie.
Yes, and I don't want to be the patient.
Yes. Don't practice on me. All right, the next request comes from the Three Hills Gymnastics Club, and their request is for $2,174.50 to purchase a air mat and new competitive suits. And I'll start that one. I'm a yes. Councillor Phobes.
I'm a yes.
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 Deputy Reeve is a yes. Councillor Christie.
Yes.
And Councillor Cunningham.
Yes.
All right, thank you for that. So that's approved. The next one is the Linden Benevolent Society, and their request is for $7,500, and they're looking at doing some window replacements at the Linden Lodge. And I guess, Councillor Phobes, you get to be first to weigh in.
And I will agree with you that I wish that they had have come in today to present to us, because I might have had a different result than no at this current time.
No? Councillor McGee.
No.
Councillor Penner.
Yes.
Deputy Reeve is a yes. Counselor Christie,
Yes?
Counselor Cunningham,
Yes.
and I am a no. However, that has the majority, so it passes. And for the same reason, I think it would have been beneficial to have additional information. The last request at this point is Kneehill Adult Learning. Their request is for $4,615, and they're wanting to make renovations to their office space. And again, I guess Councillor McGee, you get to be the first on this one.
Again, I would have liked to have more information. Without it, it's a no.
Councillor Penner,
I'm a yes.
Deputy Reeve is a yes. Councillor Christie,
Yes.
Councillor Cunningham,
I'm a no, just because I would have been great for them to come in, because there's just some unanswered questions there that I don't have answers to.
and at this point, I'm also a no. And Councillor Forbes.
I am also a no.
Okay, so that one does not get passed, so it is not approved for funding at this point in time. All right, so,
Just,
Councillor Forbes, if you would.
sorry, could you just remind them to maybe present to us in the future? Just because I think they're on certain ones like this, I have way more questions than what you could answer, Carolyn, so it's not anything against anything that's been done. Just as Councillor Penner mentioned, it might be the way in which we put the RFD out there.
Yeah, the question is always asked, but they have they have the option of attending or not attending.
Councillor Christie.
Was it not the policy before where if it was over $5,000, they had to come to council?
It was before, but we changed that. Yeah.
I'm just wondering, maybe we shouldn't have, I don't know.
Well, and that's what I think, maybe
Yeah.
we need to revisit the wording going forward, not right away, but going forward here, maybe this is one of those ones that catches our wording, you know?
Well, and to be fair, the one that didn't pass is not over the $5,000 threshold. So, there's two of them in there that really are, in my mind, marginal in terms of approving, and that shows up in the way that we voted, and it would have been beneficial for both of them to have been here in the room to explain and help us understand exactly where they're coming from. So, anyway, so we have approved Three Hills Soccer Association, Linden District Ag Society, Huxley Legion Branch, Three Hills Gymnastics, and the Linden Benevolent Society. So the total approved today is $15,524.50. So what we would need would be a motion from council to approve the, I guess, 5 that were agreed to today for the round 1 community grants to nonprofit organizations. So anyone wanting to make that motion? Councillor McGee.
I'll move that we approve the 5 that we voted in favor of.
Okay, so the motion is that council approve round 1 community grants to nonprofit organizations funding to Three Hills Soccer Association for the $2,000, Linden District Ag Society for the $2,550, Huxley Legion Branch $1,300, Three Hills Gymnastics $2,174.50, and Linden Benevolent Society for $7,500, totaling $15,524.50. Any further conversation or discussion regarding the motion? Yes, Ms. Vanderkoel.
I just wanted to reiterate that the Kneehill Adult Learning can apply again in maybe the fall, and I will suggest to them that they could come and speak to you to give you more information.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, any further conversation or discussion? Seeing none, I'm going to ask the question. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. Yes, Councillor McGee.
Could you, when you do talk to cows, I'm concerned that they are a level of government in that they get a lot of provincial funding. So how that all works and whether that is applicable would be really a good clarification for me.
I don't think any of us would disagree with the goals of Kneehill adult learning. It's just a, yeah. Yes, Ms. Vanderkoop? Yes, Councillor McGee made the motion, yes. I know you were doing some addition at the time, so. All right, are we good to move on? Okay, I am looking at 7.4, which is municipal affairs and ICF engagement. And Mr. Hogan, I understand you're taking this one, so anytime you are ready.
Through you, Mr. Chair, this is an engagement opportunity that Municipal Affairs has put out to all municipalities. There is a survey attached to this, so going through the survey, amalgamated the questions for you so that you'd have those. Additionally to the item, we did attach an RMA engagement guide. So that engagement guide is from the rural municipalities of Alberta, and on topics like this, they'll go through the items, point out considerations for municipal councillors, or basically look to assist municipalities in their response based on what's there. To go back in time, remind council that the intermunicipal collaboration framework, so what we call ICFs, are mandatory agreements that every municipality must enter into with each of their neighboring municipalities. So back when these were put in place, we were required to enter into one of these with every municipality we neighbor, in addition to intermunicipal development plans, which are a separate thing. So that for us, when we look at all of our neighbors, there were 12 or 13 of these that we had to do. They were kind enough to extend the deadline after we had them done. So we were able to accomplish that, but the ICF agreement itself is basically an agreement that outlines and lists the other agreements that we have. So when we first started this process, and it's changed since we've done it, there was a mandatory list of things that we had to discuss with other municipalities. So things like emergency management, recreation, transportation, etc. So that list has been removed since then, but at the time we did these, there was an actual list, and we had to talk about all those things. So what this led to was really the ICF agreement is a separate agreement, and it really is just listing all the services that are provided by each partner, and it tracks the other discussions or agreements that are in place. So for example, we have a fire services agreement with all of our internal urbans. That fire service agreement is not subservient to the ICF, but we updated that and negotiated it as part of the ICF process. So hopefully that makes sense. We can go back and change that agreement without changing the ICF. So that's part of the relationship between those. When the ICFs were first done, there was a time limit put on them. I believe it was 5 years. Most municipalities looked at about a 4-year outcome, because what that would do is it would align with terms of council. And so every term of council, you'd go through and look at the ICFs. If you carried on that 5 years, then there would come a point where one council missed it completely, right? Which maybe that would be beneficial to that year, but there's an awful lot of work that went into these, work and time and effort to make them happen. They're coming up on that original end date, because there has been some extension to that, although a lot of our agreements do expire this year, so we have to look at them anyway. Municipal Affairs is looking to do this engagement to say, if we're going to tweak the legislation or we're going to tweak the regulations that govern how ICFs are done, what would municipalities like to see? And so that's the survey that's in front of council. When I amalgamated the questions, I did note in there, I left questions 1 to 4 off. Those are what I would consider administrivia. I don't need council's guidance on what municipality we are. Did we go to arbitration? We know the answer to those questions, right? So I haven't included those, but so when it starts at question 5, that's why, is those are just those setup ones. 5 is when you're actually getting into an opinion or what you want to see, right? And so we can go about these a couple ways. Is administratively we can track answers and go back and fill the survey out, which is easy enough. We do have a link to the survey. We could bring it up on screen as well and fill it out as we go. But administration is easy either way.
Okay, so I certainly hope you did your homework before you came today and came prepared to give some direction. So perhaps we should just work our way down through the list and give direction to our admin as far as what we'd like to see. And Councillor Phobes, if you'd like to comment.
So of the stuff that's listed here, Mr. Hogan, is there stuff that has come up since? I mean, there's 2 of us that didn't sit on this when you guys did the ICF, so I'm just curious to the list that they have here through A through F. Has other things come up that are not here that we should be aware of, in your opinion?
Through the chair, there's some very minor things. You know, these do support the major ones. So from our perspective, like transportation, where we have some agreements in that area, but not major ones. So for example, they pertain to things like if the urbans want the county to do services for them, what the costing on that is. There's some other background agreements there too that are contained in there. Like there's a couple of roads that we maintain for Three Hills that they pay us for. Again, we're talking short stretches, very minor dollar amounts, right? We have an agreement with Linden as an example, as part of our transportation agreement, that in the winter, they pay us a monthly fee and we drop the grader blade when we're going through Linden, right? So they outline very minor things like that. Water and wastewater is, you've seen a couple of those agreements they're longer term. We've dealt with little tweaks to them over the last few years. Those are like the Vernon, Mount Equity. We do provide water services to some Drumheller residents, etc. Right? The solid waste, those ones for us largely stemmed around shared transfer stations like Acme, as an example, in governing those, who is funding those entities or what the funding split is. Emergency services, we could, of course, that's a different one. CREMA is, throughout my career, I've been part of 2 regional emergency management agencies. One's CREMA, one's CREMA. So but we have, so CREMA, which is ours, is the, you know, that's a regional entity on its own, so it didn't fall as much into this. But one of the ones that did, we lumped in here as an example, would be the peace officer contracts, right? The fire obviously was a big one in there, right? And so that was those were 2 that made that up. Of course, fire was a huge proportion of that. Peace officers much smaller. Recreation is like it said, the county has traditionally, I'm going to use the term always. The county's pretty much always provided some recreation funding to the urbans. These agreements are what solidified that. The amount of funding we give Three Hills for upkeep of the pool, the arena, the splash park, the tennis courts, whatever, right? And similar in the other urbans. The approach we took to the recreation agreements is we did not want to get into, we're going to pay X amount for the arena, X amount for the pool, X amount for this. We just said, here's a dollar figure, you figure it out year to year where you want to apply it. You know, so if this year you need more money because you're doing something at the tennis courts and you need less money at the splash park, you don't need to come back to us. We've given you rec funding sorted out, right? And we took that approach with all of them. Trying to think of the other services that we talked about. The only one that really jumps to mind is the weed and pest control that we do. So again, we have certified weed pest inspectors, which is of course regulated and legislated as part of our Ag Service Board operations, right? The towns are required to do that too, but of course they don't have the scope or magnitude to justify really bringing in their own people to do that. So they contract us to do it. That one was, that's a very minor agreement. It's very straightforward. It's literally, here's the dollar rate, and we'll come in once a year to do this A, B, and C for you. Because it's not an ongoing, we're not doing that every day. It's a sweep or two, and there's a rate attached to that as we do that within the urban. So there is, again, it would be one that, say, didn't fall into those, but it's very minor and straightforward. The approach we took to ones like that is basically administration worked out the details of that one. Ultimately, they all have to be approved by council. But really, the ICF negotiating committees, there were ones like that. They just said, okay, send the administrations away. They'll figure this out because it's straightforward. It's A to B type of thing. And they'll come back to the councils. And that left the ICF negotiating committees to deal on the bigger things like fire, recreation, right? So we took a lot of those little things off the plate because ultimately they have to come back to council anyway.
The weed inspection is kind of complaint driven where they direct our staff to where to go, or they go through the whole town?
We, my understanding, I believe, is we go through and do what I've referred to as a sweep. So we'll go through and do that. There is I believe, if I go back into that agreement, I believe that there can be a complaint component in there. But we'll go through and we'll give them a list of entities that they should issue notices to. The other benefit of doing that to us is it fulfills that requirement for them. But of course, if you have lots of noxious weeds showing up in your urban, turns out the weeds don't recognize lines on a map. So it's a benefit. Yeah. So it is a benefit to us to assist if there's anything going on in the urbans on that front to nip it before it gets out into the county.
Rail lines, so.
Yeah.
Okay, so any further clarification needed, or are we prepared to give some direction? Okay. So the first question, of course, relates to the list or no list. So based on your experience, which for two of us is hard to say, but based on the experience, the legislation should be amended to reinsert the specific list, reinsert the list with ability to add, or no change. It should not have a list or other. Sure, go for it.
I'm B, and the reason I'm B is it's a great starting point, especially when you have a change of council, and it just shows this is what we're going to be dealing with. So that's my justification for B.
Okay. Anybody else want to comment on that?
I agree with Debbie, 100%.
Councillor Forbes?
I like B as well, just because of the fact that what you've learned from the last set to this round would really help myself, who wasn't here, to be able to understand that if we needed to add something, it could be. So yes, I also like that. Thank you.
Any other comments with regard to the first one? Sounds like we're leaning pretty hard toward B. The only comment I would make there is to follow the direction from RMA, which said that we should specifically eliminate any third-party service providers. So we want that noted as, because you get sometimes some of the municipalities have had third-party recreation service providers or whatever that want to be included, and they're not municipally funded, and so we don't want to be getting involved in that. So that would be my only comment. Did you want to make a comment, Mr. Hogan?
I was just going to say in relation to you, Mr. Chair, in relation to that, our perspective as administration is we would like a list in there as well. I agree with the RMA's take that I think there's more risk than there is benefit of leaving it wide open, and that's based on some of the ICFs that are out there. I know that there's some ICFs out there, as an example, where the rural is funding downtown beautification of the urban. Things like that got put into the agreements. Some of them are arguing over like internal public transportation, like buses internal to the urban, and lumping that under transportation. That happened out there in the first rounds. So I think there's benefit to not only having a list, but having that list defined as to what's in scope and out of scope for that. You'll see a number of municipalities that are You know, as an example, the defined transportation as well. People from the rural area come in and use our shops and our businesses and stuff like that, so you should be paying for part of our road network. I think it's silly for municipalities to get into that debate and around there. I don't want to put a traffic counter on the road going to the golf course and trying to figure out how many people came from Three Hills or not. That seems like a waste of resources. So the more that you define that scope and that list, it keeps those discussions narrowed in on what you actually need or should be talking about.
So I'd say we're selecting B and other on that one, Carolyn. I know it's hard, so can we type a comment in the other? No, not with, oh, we can't select it otherwise.
So yeah, I think what the other is the copy of number 2 plus what we have to add to that being no third party.
Deputy Woodstock.
Sorry to interrupt, but I do not believe that I have that form that's up on the screen right now. Or if I do, could you tell me where I would find it? Because I have.
Page 65 in the package, Jerry.
Okay.
So it'll look different than the screen because they're on the actual survey site, but our package has a copy.
Yeah.
Sorry, I do have the ICF. What am I looking at? The ICF survey review questions, but I do not have the A, B, or C. The doc.
We don't really have A, B, or C either, Jerry. We just have the 4.
Oh.
We have reinsert the list with this, reinsert the list of specifics, no change, and other. So we just have the options.
Okay.
And Debbie just designated the second one as B rather than, there is no lettering there. So you have exactly what we do. The form that Carolyn has on the screen right now basically is the actual survey from Municipal Affairs.
Okay, thanks for that.
So the comment is not to include any third-party service providers. Okay, the next question 6, referring to A above or A to E above, whatever, the list of, is there anything that should be added? And my answer is no.
No. Oh, please.
Everybody's shaking their head saying the answer to question 6 is no. So if the list was reintroduced, question 7 to the legislation, are there services that should be removed from the list as mandatory? And at this point, we'd probably be saying no to that too.
I like them there.
Any comment by anyone on that one? Okay.
I just want to make sure administration comments too, if you feel there was something that you guys saw from the other side, where we gave you direction to look into it, you know, please speak up.
Through Mr. Chair, I think the only thing that we'd add before we hit submit is just we'd recommend that we add is that list of around providing additional scope to that list that's in there.
Okay. So what I hope is that at the end of this conversation we have, we're just going to hit save for now, and then somebody's going to go back and review, make sure that we're clear in our intent. Okay, we'll move on then to the next page, Carolyn, which is question 8, I believe. Based on your experience, the legislation should remain the same, requiring a review every 5 years, change, requiring review at least every 7 years, change to not specify the duration of an agreement allowing municipalities to review their agreements as they see fit or other. How do we feel about this one? Are you using your mic? I'm not hearing you.
No. I said I'd go with remain the same because then each new council has a chance to have a conversation about the ICF agreement and whether maybe it should be forward to follow that election period.
Okay, Councillor Penner.
I like 5 years. It may not be any changes, but at least it could just be a one meeting thing with the other party, just to make sure. Yep, and it does give the opportunity for a new council to be exposed to it.
Councillor McGee.
Mike, would you refresh with me how many points we don't have additional agreements with? So, you know, for me, when we say we have an agreement on fire and we don't list much else in the ICF other than that they're referred to the agreement, maybe time means 7 years. Because if we can amend agreements, why would we go through this costly expense if all our agreements are still changeable within that time?
Yeah, and through you, Mr. Chair, there is a consideration there because you don't need to change the ICF agreement to change the fire services agreement. We've changed the Mount Vernon and Equity Water Service agreements without changing the ICF agreement. And those agreements are at different lengths. So the fire services agreements, we're going to be back into those right away because we align that date with the ICF review. The Mount Vernon water agreement was a 20-year agreement where unless something specific comes up where we need to go back to that, we're not back into that one for, I suspect none of us will be sitting around this table when we're back into that one. But that's the, you know, barring something very specific coming up along the way, right? So the ICF agreement itself is really just going into say, hey, is this still the list of services? Are we still good with that? Do we need to look at any of these agreements? It's really, I feel like it's, for us, it's going to be more of a check-in. There's other municipalities out there where it's going to probably be a fight every single time. Right?
So then my question to that is, when you say at least every 7 years, doesn't mean we couldn't make an agreement to be in 3 years, but those people who have to have enough agreements that 7 years is sufficient. Okay, because that would be my vote.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Penner?
I need a refresher, and just to make sure I understand, as a council each term, even the agreements that have been adjusted or changed a little bit. So that's why I do say 5, and I don't think it would be a big commitment because it's already done. It's just making sure we're aware of what's been changed or amended or just my thoughts.
Okay, any other thoughts? Councillor Phobes.
I also would probably, from the perspective of not sitting here before, the 5 years is good for me. And the reason I would go for 5 is because the fact that there is ever-changing legislation from the province that in that 5-year period that ICF might be affected by something coming down from a provincial level or federal level.
Okay. And some of them are just going to be, like Mr. Hogan has said, yep, we're good. And I'm sure most of our rural to rural are going to be.
Yeah, to you, Mr. Chair, like even with the urbans, like some of the agreements, I suspect that's how they'll go. There's others where I suspect you're going to be into a debate or a negotiation with, right? Yeah, you know, some of them we're even looking at recommending changes to it. So like our weed and pest inspection agreement, we've always put a term limit on that agreement. Kevin and I have talked and we said, well, why don't we just suggest we write the agreement as it's in place until one of the parties decides it's not, and every year we just update administratively what the hourly rate is. And there's no expiry that we have to go back to negotiate. If an urban doesn't want to be a part of it, they just let us know when it's done. You know, and that saves some of that time and energy, right? Going back through that. When you do sit down to do the ICF negotiations, these other agreements are going to enter the fold, right? And that's where you'll see some of them. Are we good with this one? Yeah. are we good with this one? Yeah, and if nobody's looking for changes, then both parties should be able to say, okay, cool, moving on to the next one. And then you can put your time and energy into those ones that are going to be where you do need to get in more in depth, or you're gonna have a difference of opinions as to how it should be funded, right? I might as well jump into part of that now, because it mentions that one of the things to remember, and the RMA engagement does point this out, is the ICFs were put in place as to look at cost sharing. They were not put in place to look at revenue sharing. And that's an important distinction, because I'm going to say not every municipality in the province understood that difference. There were a lot of municipalities that approached this as ways to find revenue sharing, but that's not what these were about. They were about cost sharing.
So, and the only other comment I would make is, again, based on the RMA information that they provided, which suggested that if we are allowed to set a term that's agreeable to both parties, requiring a review every 7 years is not a bad change to make. And so, certainly from an RMA point of view, they felt a review every 7 years within the legislation does, at least every 7 years, doesn't prohibit review at an earlier period of time. So we could, in our support legislation that says minimum at least every 7 years, but in our agreements, set it at every 5 years. It doesn't exclude the ability of us to do that.
Right.
Councilor McGee.
Yeah, and I just want to reiterate that the way I see this is an extremely high-level agreement, which we have agreements within. So the ICF is very over-encompassing, where the agreements, where the deadlines would be pertinent to, could be part of that ICF process. I just see this as close to redundant if we have to do it too often. That's my personal opinion.
Mr. Chair, when we first did these, one of the ways that I guess characterized the ICF agreement itself, the actual ICF agreement, is that it's essentially a glorified agreement listing. It says, we talked about these things and this is how we dealt with them. And it contains a chart, you know, fire is dealt with as per the fire services agreement. Recreation is dealt with as per the recreation services agreement. You know, transportation, no collaboration, or whatever it would be, right? So the ICF is really the glorified agreement listing and the record of, yeah, we talked about these things as we were legislated to do.
Councilor Penner.
But in saying that, there was a lot of eye-openers, like we had agreed, and that's why, like, fair enough, we've been sitting here for a little while. For a new councillor to come in, they should become aware, and one way of becoming aware is by revisiting these documents. And even though it could just be a check, those new councillors could have a question. What do you mean we grade that road, or we put dust control down, or whatever? I think this was so valuable in bringing us all together. When I first came in, we weren't necessarily together. Now I feel we're more together as a region, and this is one of the aspects that brought us together in my books.
Okay. So again, the question would be is if we know that we can specify a term of the agreement that's less than 7 years, and this is an overarching piece of provincial legislation, would we have a problem? Could we say it doesn't matter, or are we willing to say 7 years would be adequate as an overarching for provincial legislation, but have an agreement within ourselves that we're doing them every 5 years? Of course, that requires our partner municipalities to agree to that as well. So if we leave it at the 5 years, requiring a review every 5 years, that's our feeling that we prefer that. Then if that gets written into the legislation, it also requires our partners to agree to do that. And it's not, well, would you like to do it? No, it's like we have to do it. So maybe that 5 years is not a bad suggestion. Councilor Christie.
Confrontation is lack of communication. If you have open communication on a timeline with nobody coming to the table mad, I think is important. So if you're we gotta get this done, we gotta talk about this, and we've been putting it off. So I think that's important for me.
Yeah. Okay, so I hear that we're saying every 5 years. That seems to be the majority of opinion that's in the room at this point in time. Would anybody have a major problem with that? That's great. Okay, all right. We're okay to move on to the next one then? The next one is, based on your experience, the legislation should require costs associated with shared services in an ICF to be determined based on, select all that apply. Equalized assessment, usage by municipality. I'm just going to read through this and then I'll come to you, Mr. Hogan. Population, i.e. cost per capita, mutual agreement by the municipality based on a specific service, independent assessment findings and recommendations. None of the above. This legislation should not specify how costs are allocated and other. Mr. Hogan.
Through Mr. Chair, I wanted to jump in on the beginning of this because I cannot stress how much I agree with the RMA engagement guide of do not check the box for equalized assessment. If you look at, and I don't want this to be interpreted as any way of disparaging of Kneehill housing because it isn't, but if you want an example of what equalized funding based on equalized assessment does, look at Kneehill housing. Our equalized assessment is so much larger than any urban that we are dealing with. And to me, if that's a way of introducing revenue sharing, not cost sharing.
So, comments. We know the first one is off the table, and I don't think any of us would disagree. What other methodologies are you considering as usable? Mr. Hogan, how about Deputy Reeve Woodstock first, and then you, Mr. Hogan?
My thoughts are population should also not be on that list. I don't believe that if we're dealing with smaller municipalities, that our population cost per cap should be the number used. It should be the usage by the municipality and maybe where our residents are kind of conglomerated around. I know a lot of our population, well, I wouldn't say a lot of our population, but our population does not actually use the facilities within our boundaries because some of them live closer to our external boundaries and use the services that are outside of our municipality or region. So population should not be one of the things that I feel population shouldn't be used.
Okay, thank you for that. And Mr. Hogan.
To build on this, what I'll say is that there's one of the things you get into, and I think we saw this when we went through these processes, is what principles are you doing each service on? And that might change from service to service. And so as an example, when we went through the fire service agreements, one of the arguments that came back to us from at least one of the municipalities was call volume. And so when they looked at their stats and they said, 97% of our calls are in the county, 3% are in the urban, therefore the county should be paying 97% of the cost of our fire department. We said no. Now, in some cases, that might make sense. So for example, when we were negotiating costs around transfer stations, and there was actual data that said the split was about 50-50 of usage, we said, you know what? In that instance, population makes sense to us. So let's look at that and look at the cost based on 50-50 of population. So there were differences there. For the fire ones, we said the call volume doesn't make sense to us because one, a number of those motor vehicle collisions are actually provincial calls, not county calls, even though they're in the county. But we also said the reality is if you are having a fire department, you need to provide A, B, C, and D, whether we are at the table or not. So this doesn't make sense to us to go by call volume. Because if we weren't here, you would still need to pay for this piece of equipment, this training, you'd just be doing it all on your own. So that struck us as a better one of we should find ways to share this. And even within the fire services agreement, we did different things. So as an example, we recognized that when you look at equipment, if we're looking at something like an engine, well, we both need an engine if we would have had our own fire departments. So maybe that's a good one to share on a different basis. But we also recognize when we look at like the rapid attack unit, or what we call bush buggies, right? That's primarily 100% a county use, and the only reason it's there is for responding to calls in the county. So the county said, well, it makes sense we own 100% of that, right? Because if we weren't at the table, your department might not actually need or have that unit, right? So we did that. I can tell you, talking with some of my colleagues, some of my rural colleagues did buy into the call volume argument, and they made their agreements that way. And that might have been right for them. I'm not to say because I don't know their context, right? So when you get into some of these things, it may change service to service, right? And that leads to, I'm not sure if there is a great way, as much as I like clarity and definition, I don't know if there's a great one there, because even with our own agreements, we looked at different services in different ways, right? Depending on what made sense within the environment and the context. That's the point. Is anything related to, like they've said, population can be problematic. Anything related to assessments, not just equalized, can be problematic too. We look at this when this isn't an ICF thing, but when we look at provincial policing costs as an example, part of that formula was proposed as assessment. Part of it is as assessment. We're saying there are a lot of instances where assessment does not drive rates of crime. If you go by anything to do with assessment as an example, just because Artis builds another well in the area doesn't mean that that's driving further usage of Carbon's pool. They're not related, right?
Councillor McGee.
So I'm having a hard time answering this question myself, and I've thought about it a lot. And part of the issue, I think, is we had excellent conversations and found those lines quite well. And in the cases where it was challenging, we also had mediation help us with some of those lines. So, but though I have heard many municipalities have had a lot of conflict, and some for a very, very long time. Can you give me a sense of what you think is the primary cause of that conflict?
Can I just make a comment before you do, Mr. Hogan? Like, some of the next questions I think would resolve some of the conflict issues. Because when we did mediation with Trochu and shared the cost, I think the answer when we get further in this about mediation and arbitration is in all cases, they should be absolutely split costs. And the reason for that is if I'm a small urban and a rural, and the big rural municipality is picking up 70 or 80% of that arbitration cost, I don't care how long it takes. And when we did our mediation with Trochu, we had it very specified, and it was costing them as like it was costing us. And so I have no problem in this question saying it should be mutual agreement by municipality based on a specific service. If we're very definite in the future ones to say all costs for mediation and or arbitration, 50-50. Because then that, and Mr. Hogan, if you would like to comment, go ahead. Sorry.
Through you, Mr. Reeve, I think that's good. Like I said, as much as I do like that, having in these agreements how we negotiate the rules of the game established, I think the contexts are very different, service to service. And I do recognize that also opens up additional, call it risk or potential conflict when you lack that clarity. So for example, when we put that argument back about not using call volume on the fire department, that was accepted. We'd have been into a very different process if it wasn't, right? We'd have been into a different sort of conflict. And that risk will, in some fashion, probably always be there.
Councillor Forbes, did you have a comment?
Maura, if you're gonna do this, can you do what we did before, which is the mutual agreements, and then down in the box, and then add the 50/50 cost share?
That's in the next
That's in
question.
the next, okay, perfect, thank you. All right, so I see where you're going, thank you.
Yeah, in the next parts of this, it does ask about how our experiences were with mediation or arbitration, and it talks about how we should share costs.
I didn't want to start the conversation on this one, and I agree, a mutual agreements by municipality, so.
Like, to me, we did very well in our negotiations with our neighbors, coming to mutual agreements on specific things. And yeah, sometimes we had a little bit of back and forth and whatever, but we were able to accomplish that. So to me, that was a good place to end up. Councillor Christie?
Just to comment on the arbitration, it was a good learning procedure to handle the rest. And they were certainly watching what we were doing in Trojan. So that cost, I think, had value because it brought somebody in to open all our eyes on what we were doing, but it set the template for everybody else.
Okay, so I've had a request for a short recess. And so I'm going to say we're going to take a recess to 11:40. Is that enough? Okay. All right, so we're in recess for 11:40, and we'll come back. So it is 11:40, and I'm going to call our meeting back to order, so we can keep moving along. So for those of you, question 10 is, please rate your municipality's experience with the mediation process. Very positive, positive, neither positive nor negative, negative, very negative, unsure, or not applicable. Well, we did engage in mediation with Trochu. For those of you who are involved and who were on council at the time, how would you rate that experience with the mediation process?
I would say the outcome.
Are you using your microphone?
I would say the outcome was positive, but it maybe didn't start out that way.
Okay, thank you. I see Deputy Reeve nodding his head. And so would you rate that then as neither positive nor negative? Or would you say it was positive?
For me, I would say positive at the end of it.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say positive at the end. Yeah.
I also would say positive because they're asking about the process. And most mediation processes will start off not so good. But does it end in a good result? Well, then that meant the process was positive.
Okay. All right, so we're rating it as a positive. In your opinion, under the, question 11, in your opinion, under the legislation, if municipalities are unable to reach an agreement by a set timeline, should they be required to enter into mediation, go directly to arbitration, or other? Councillor McGee.
Mediation.
Okay. I see Deputy Reeve nodding his head. So we would support mediation before arbitration. The legislation currently says that they go directly to arbitration.
I'll justify my point of view. Arbitration is too adversarial, and I believe the overall point is to be able to work together, and so you're undoing that just by ordering arbitration. You still are allowing an opportunity for that to happen if you have mediation.
Okay. Deputy Reeve Woodstock.
I would agree with mediation. As soon as you get into arbitration, I think their formula changes to equalize the assessment for who pays. And you really have no voice in that arbitration from what I can gather. Somebody else is making a decision and they don't take the factors involved that you may have at your municipal level.
Okay, thank you for that. And guess what? We raised all the reasons why RMA suggested mediation over arbitration, which is the costs and how they're distributed, and the fact that arbitration tends to be a more controversial adversarial process than mediation. So our response would be mediation. Okay, well, question 12 says, in your opinion, the division of costs associated with mediation and arbitration should be based on, and the answers are equalized assessment, a standard metric, i.e. total revenue or something like that, equal division amongst all parties, or other. You know where I came down on this one earlier.
Equal.
I agree.
And that applies to both mediation and arbitration.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Because as soon as they start talking that equalized assessment and associated costs in that way, we lose. All right, question sorry, Councillor Pope, sorry.
Just having a little side chat over here. In my opinion, when I look at this, because it is something that the province has brought on for us to take on, it should be a third, a third, and a third.
Oh. You want the province to pay a third?
Well, because then they should have some ownership in what they're putting on the municipalities to become friends and lovers and all of that, and now you big yo-ho happy unicorn and rainbows.
There's an image that'll never leave my head.
Thanks, Kate.
You want to reframe that comment?
Nope.
Okay, so what do we think? Currently,
Does that open up another can of worms that they might want to have a third of the involvement when we write them? So,
Then they should have just written them.
but maybe I don't want it because I don't know the local.
yeah, and
Dynamics.
that's the problem, I think, that's been enunciated over and over and over. When the province decides that it's better in their hands than in local hands, the process gets very, very, yeah, and the results usually, everybody's unhappy, and that means that they were successful. But if we could end up at a result where both parties are happy, which we did through the ICF process, and maybe we didn't get everything that we wanted, but at least we were, and I think our relationships with our partners have been much better after the ICF than they were ever before. So I'm not sure I want them involved, but if they would pick up a third of the cost. So do we want to add a comment to that effect or not? Okay. All right. So then question 13 becomes, in your opinion, for municipalities going through the arbitration process, the legislation should stipulate that the arbitrator, not the minister, writes the framework, and the municipalities are required to adopt it. The municipalities write the framework based on the arbitrator's decision and are required to adopt it, which is currently the status. And another third party writes the framework and the municipalities are required to adopt it. And this is when you get to arbitration. For Kneehill County, that did not happen.
Oh,
We
okay.
went through the mediation process, but not the arbitration process. And only with one community, so, yeah. Mr. Hogan.
Well, those, for added information on that, we did have one of our partners threaten arbitration as part of one of the negotiations. But if there's more history wanted on that, that would probably not be an open session discussion. But-
That's fair. We're good. We'll just ask 3 questions.
So are we okay with the status quo? Certainly to have municipal involvement as opposed to the minister or a third party.
We didn't have to go to arbitration like we said, so I don't have a lot of opinions on it, and I say status quo.
All right, I think I see a consensus of opinion that we would say status quo. So question 14. In your opinion, in the event a municipality chooses to ignore the arbitrated decision, okay, here we go. The minister should have the authority to, and here you can select a number of options, act as the municipality and adopt the framework on their behalf, take any action as if the municipalities had not followed a directive issued under the Act, i.e. suspending municipal authority to pass bylaws, withholding money from the municipality, and or dismissing council or the chief administrative officer, allow the municipalities to pursue this in the court action, which is the status quo, or other. And since we didn't have to go through this, just leave it as the status quo. Councillor Forbes.
I am in favor of leaving it as the status quo, but with the understanding that if someone's not willing to come to the table and it goes to arbitration, they should pick up the whole entire bill.
Okay, so
How you word that?
is there a place, so could we just copy 3 and post it into other and then add the comment that the party that ignores the arbitrated decision then becomes responsible for paying the entire cost of arbitration?
I'm going to be devil's advocate and say, this is required by municipal affairs, therefore they should be able to have some power to make it happen. And I don't want to be the person who has a municipality who won't agree, and I have to go to court to get something to happen when they won't follow the municipal government's request. That should not be our responsibility if that were to ever happen to us. I believe the government should have some authority to say, you were told to do this, now you didn't do it, here's the consequences. There should be some meat to this entire process.
So then are you saying perhaps that 1 or 2
Yeah.
would be the more appropriate way?
Yeah, 1 is my first choice.
Okay, so Councillor McGee is suggesting that we give the authority to the minister to then act as a municipality and adopt the framework on their behalf. Oh, Deputy Reeve Whitstock.
Well, luckily, we didn't end up having to go through any arbitration or what have you, but I still think that if, from what I gather, there were some arbitration decisions that were made that were highly unliked by some of the municipalities. So I feel that they should have the right to take it to court and maybe have a judge make the decision on whether or not the arbitrator was correct or not. Maybe there was bias in it, but I know I've talked to a couple of counselors where they weren't happy with the arbitration process and they were pretty much forced into paying what they had to pay. I think they should be able to go to court.
Okay, so where are we landing on this one? Are we going to go back to status quo then? So on check other. On check other. And delete the comment that's there. And then go with status quo.
Sorry, that's just my opinion. I'm not talking for the group. That's my opinion. And I think court should be the last resort.
So, Councillor Christie.
I think court should be the last resort, but I also think the court should decide where the costs go at that point.
Okay, so I think we're coming down on the side of status quo. I know there's maybe some other opinion in the room, but I think for the most part, that's where we're ending up. Okay. All right. So question 15 is, in your opinion, in cases where arbitrated decisions are determined to have an unfair impact or go beyond the legislative provisions of an ICF, the minister should allow the arbitrator's order to stand, have the authority to dismiss the arbitrator's decision and have the municipalities renegotiate, have the authority to amend or remove elements of the arbitrator's decision, or other. Well, even if the minister was to dismiss and ask them to renegotiate, they might end up in the same place. And if he had the authority to amend or remove elements of the arbitrator's decision, they may end up in court anyway. So the least one that we probably would like would be to allow the arbitrator's order to stand without any ability for the parties to either renegotiate or appeal.
Just ask for clarity, Mike. Sorry, Mr. Hogan. Could you just explain what it means when they say go beyond the legislative provisions of an ICF? Just for clarity for me, please.
Through Mr. Chair, to the amount of clarity I can provide on that is, I look at the unfair impact, because part of the question is who determines that it's unfair? Deputy Reeve Wittstock is absolutely correct. There's a number of municipalities out there that feel like they got an unfair shake on things. And listening to the cases on a personal level, I don't disagree with some of them. But who determines that? When it says go beyond the legislated provisions of an ICF, I think this was born out of some cases where municipalities were complaining, or concerned would be a better word, that when they did go to arbitration, the arbiter, I think it says it even in the guide somewhere, they were accepting anecdotal evidence, or what was the threshold of proof, right? That was being put forward. And I think there were broader concerns around the arbiters maybe didn't have enough municipal experience to be performing that role for municipalities, and a number of other related things. So to go beyond the legislative provisions of an ICF, what confuses me about that as well is that if you've clearly gone beyond the legislative provisions, then the court should make short work of that.
Thank you, that's why.
Right?
Thank you for clarity.
So would we then say the answer to 15 is the same as the answer to 14, which would be allow municipalities to pursue this in court action? So we would select other for 15 and put that comment there?
That would be my thoughts, but.
Because I have talked to some people who said when they got involved in arbitration, the arbitrator just went off base completely and all of a sudden was considering all sorts of other things outside of what was even reasonably considered to be within the scope of our ICF, and where they ended up was just like a nightmare. So, and so we don't want to find ourselves in that position. And the sad thing about giving the authority to the minister to just dismiss the arbitrator's decision is you still haven't resolved it. So he orders you to renegotiate. Well, guess what? Where are you going to end up? You're going to end up back in arbitration. It's probably cheaper to go to court than it is to go back through the whole process. Deputy Reeve Wittstock.
I guess speaking back at going through arbitration again, you would have to use a different arbitrator, someone that maybe both parties agree to. Because obviously, if you use the same arbitrator, you're not getting any further ahead.
Which is why maybe renegotiation isn't really a valid option. Although who knows? I know that in the RMA stuff there, in the end, they don't really end up on a hard place on this one because it's, how does the arbitration process work and is there fairness within arbitration? Theoretically, you would think. My understanding was, and Deputy Reeve, correct me if I'm wrong, when we were talking about arbitration in the first case, what ended up happening is both sides would present their arguments to the arbitrator and the rationale behind why they felt the decision should be made one way or another. And then the arbitrator looked at those two presentations and would make a decision that might not even relate to the positions taken by the two people presenting. Is that correct?
Yeah, they had the discretion to move outside of what was actually being discussed. And I don't believe that is where the arbitrator's position should be.
Yeah.
I think it should be strictly on the points that are presented, not outside of those points.
Okay, so are we happy with that then? Just allow the municipalities to pursue this in a court action? Okay. All right, and question 16 is just basically, do you have anything else you would like to share about ICFs? And if anyone had a comment, then we would add that comment. If not, then we would basically be at the end of the survey. Mr. Hogan?
Mr. Riva, just wanted to allow council to have a first go at this, but seeing nothing, this might be the opportunity for us to put in that, you know, if you're going to include a list, provide a scope to that list. Right? Transportation includes this, this, and this, but does not include this, this, and this. Right? The other one that I would put in, or I shouldn't say I would put it in personally, I'll suggest it to you and you can decide if you would or not, is something around when you get into those negotiations, negotiating in good faith. And I think we didn't see this much really at all, but I know other municipalities did, where they would negotiate something like a fire agreement. And they'd come to an agreement on fire services. And then they would start negotiating recreation. And they wouldn't be able to get to an agreement on that. And you started seeing stances like, well, if you don't give us the extra 20,000 here, we're going to revisit the fire agreement. Because the municipality, one of the partners was looking at it as a bottom line dollar figure as opposed to this is what's fair in fire, this is what's fair in, it's possible that we agree on 90% of the things and our conflict's only in 10%. But there were some entities out there that took the approach of, no, this is the dollars I want to get at the bottom level, and if it happens to be more or less on recreation versus fire, it doesn't matter, it's just the dollars on the bottom. And so that ability to hold some of those agreements hostage to get what you want on other ones, I would argue is a bad faith negotiating. If you've agreed what's fair on fire, you've agreed what's fair on fire. Put it on the shelf, move on. Yeah, and you negotiate those separately. It's really about, yeah, you know, what I'd consider is ensuring that there's some safeguards for good faith negotiating. Because if you're willing to, I think I would put out there, if you're willing to change the amounts of those agreements on that case, you probably don't have solid principles on which those agreements are based.
Okay. All right. We might have to clean them up a little bit, and we'll leave that to you to clarify.
If council's good with an addition like that, we can clean that up, and then we'll pretty much be ready to hit finish.
Okay.
But we'll do that after council makes the motion for us to do this. Probably after the meeting, we'll clean it up.
So we'll save what we have here now, and then we would make a motion to give you direction to submit the survey, right? Okay, are there any other things that we want to discuss related to this, or are we ready to make a motion to direct administration to submit the survey as per discussed? What is your wishes? Councillor McGee.
I'd like to move that we direct administration to submit the survey regarding the intermunicipal collaboration frameworks to municipal affairs with the answers as we determined under the same direction as we've given.
Okay. So we have a motion to direct administration to submit the April 2024 survey regarding intermunicipal collaboration frameworks to municipal affairs with the answers as discussed here today. Okay, if we're in favor of that.
Good. Thank you.
Okay. There we go. Thank you. Any further question or comment related to that? I'm not seeing any, so I'm going to ask the question. All those in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. So item 8.1 is disposition of delegation business, and that has to do with Southern Alberta Energy from Waste Association. And Mr. Hogan.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think this is, there's no recommended action that administration has coming out of that delegation. It was just one that the county provides funding to them every year, and we felt like it'd been a while since we'd heard of them, or not heard of them, heard from them in this type of format. So we thought it would be worthwhile to invite them to update council directly. With that, we'd only say that to accept for information.
Okay, thank you for that. And so just for information, I guess for people who may be watching, is currently our cost of membership is calculated at 80 cents per cap, and we are spending $3,993.60 currently for that membership. And so just a little extra information. Ms. Vanderkoe.
I just wanted to add that that presentation has been emailed to all council members, and it will also be included in the post-agenda package.
Okay, Deputy Reeve Whitstock.
Just wondering if we could get the information that was referred to by the presentation, by the presenter, the confidential stuff. Just I haven't seen that for a while, so I don't know, maybe there's been some upgrades done to it.
So basically, he said that we could request that, and he would provide that in confidence to us. So that would be an addition to what we need here. So are you making that as a motion then to request the confidential data that Southern Alberta Energy Waste Association offered to provide?
Yes, I would make the motion that we receive the presentation for information from the Southern Alberta Energy and Waste Association, and to request the information that was referred to in his presentation.
Okay. And my understanding is that information that he said he could send to us would be provided to us in confidence. All right, so the motion says council receive for information the presentation provided by the Southern Alberta Energy from Waste Association and request the confidential information that was referenced in the presentation. So any discussion, comment? I'm not seeing any, so I'm going to ask the question. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. So then what we are doing is we're moving on to council and committee reports. And the first one I added was the FCSS, I guess, on approved minutes from the March 12th meeting, just so you would be aware of where we're at and what we're up to. And if there were any questions there, I would be prepared to respond to those. Councillor Cunningham.
Just a question. I know these aren't the final minutes, but Seniors Outreach is an entity under Kneehill Regional FCSS, and I'm curious if it would ever be possible to get an update on their activities. Like, I know it says here written report attached, and we don't get that, but just it would be really nice to see, because we have such a high demographic of seniors in Kneehill County. It would just be really interesting to see kind of what they're up to. And I know, like, we don't really see their events that are published, like in our newsletter or anything, and I'm just wondering if maybe some of our seniors are missing out on some events and activities that are happening.
Okay, so just for clarifications, seniors outreach report can, we probably would have to ask their permission to present it, but that would be, they're not actually under FCSS. They are a separate organization that is funded by FCSS, but we could certainly chase that for you. And sure, yep, I'll chase that one for you.
Thank you.
We partner with them because they're already doing seniors activities, and so rather than duplicate what they're already doing through our own funding, we provide them with funding and allow them to deliver those services. Yeah. But I'll chase that one for you, sure. And any other questions on FCSS? I'm assuming that Michaela will be coming to council based on the request that was made by FCSS to be a delegation and present on community coach program. So at some point we'll have a report there. And then I also put into council and committee reports the Drumheller meeting that I attended along with the Reeves from Starland and Wheatland and the chair of the Special Areas Board and the mayor of Drumheller. And I have provided you with that, and I will just say that Mayor Kohlberg is looking to engage in ICF negotiations with Kneehill County. The problem we might have at this point in time is whether we actually can engage in those negotiations. And the reason for that is Reeve Link from Wheatland County said the understanding that RMA has is at this point in time, because of the engagement process that Municipal Affairs is in, that there's sort of a moratorium on negotiations. So we might have to together request permission from Municipal Affairs to engage in that conversation. So that's again for your information. I think the willingness was expressed by all parties at that meeting that we were prepared to negotiate and to have conversation. The biggest part of the conversation we had was just around why Drumheller's charging for parking. So, and it's basically a stopgap measure that they see because they have not previously negotiated ICF agreements around recreation and other things. So, any questions? Councillor McGee.
I think it's really unfortunate that that's their argument, and based on the fact that many efforts to have an ICF negotiation by our other parties has happened over the past, and I think that's unfortunate.
I don't disagree with you. Drumheller is a tourist destination and they get a lot of visitors, and so they are also contemplating discussion with the province around some funding to help with infrastructure, and just because of the sort of, I'm going to call it foreign visitors, and it's not so much just necessarily foreign, but Canadian and other people from different parts of Alberta who tour through Drumheller and put stress on the infrastructure that's there, and they're looking perhaps to have the province help with some of that as well, especially in light of the fact that the province is really keen on designating a place like Drumheller as a potential tourist destination, much like the conversation we're having with them around Horseshoe Canyon. So it's not just us surrounding municipalities that they're talking to, but others. And my understanding is I think they have They have a season pass that's available, and I think they're talking like $125, which would allow you to park at their destination sites throughout the year and use the pool or the BCF center. And included in that, if you have a pool membership and or a membership to the BCF, you get parking with that membership. So there are ways that they are spreading that out. There's a daily fee, there's a, there's an hourly fee, a daily fee, and a yearly fee that they have proposed in their parking scenario. And so they are looking at ways to spread out some of that cost. So, and it's only in the touristy locations, so where you're going to pay that fee. So if you're downtown shopping or you're in one of the malls, you're not paying a parking fee. So, all right, that's it for that one. I'll try to keep you up to date where we go on that. Go ahead, Councillor Forbes.
So normally, when would we have met with the town of Drumheller for an ICF?
5 years ago.
No, but currently coming up, when would be the?
When the next process is ready.
And do we have an idea of when that is? Oh,
Well, technically, I guess it would be within the next year or so that we would enter into a review. We do have an ICF with them. We just don't have the associated agreements. So we don't have a recreation agreement. We don't have a fire agreement. We do have an ICF with Drumheller, but they deferred all the other agreements at the time when we negotiated the original ICF and said they would let us know when they are prepared. They are letting us know they are prepared. So, and partly it's because they're recognizing that they have had funding that might have been available that they haven't accessed. So. But it was their choice to defer all the other agreements. So, okay, any other, if there's no other questions on that one, the next one would be the CAPE update, 9.3.
Thank you. I just wanted to update that they just sent out notice to us yesterday that they have set the AGM date for June 28th. I also want the Reeve to know that I'm not able to attend on behalf, because again, that family commitment that I talked about is landing right there as well. They will be unveiling their new website, and I wanted to just report that to you because the current one is very frustrating. So please hang on tight if you were looking to get website type of help and information. A new improved process is on its way.
Okay, new and improved, eh? All right, thank you for that. That AGM is in Red Deer, I assume?
No, Innisfail Golf Course.
Oh, okay. All right. And Councillor Cunningham, you wanted to give us an update on your Division 5 ratepayer day?
And I'm always going to sneak something else in, but just to kind of go on your Division 7 update, I just wanted to mention that Mayor Wildeman, Town of Three Hills, and I toured a potential doctor around Three Hills and area. I filled in for Reeve King, and it always seems to go well. I don't think Ray and I could have highlighted the Town of Three Hills and Kneehill County any better. We kind of thought we might have been the dynamic duo, but anyhow. I just want to say thanks to Dr. Calhoun and the doctors at the Kneehill Medical Clinic and all the staff there, because they're doing an amazing job with their recruitment attempts, and it was really good because I got to sit around the table with them and have lunch. So they really do highlight the area and how appreciative they are to live here and to work here and to practice here. So again, I do thank Dr. Calhoun and all the staff at the work that they're doing. A lot of energy and time they put into it, so let's hope we have some positive results from some of that. So, yeah, and then for me, next Monday, April 15th, I will be hosting my Division 5 ratepayer meeting at the Lodge Room at the Three Hills Community Center from 10 a.m. till 7 p.m., as I did last year. Coffee, treats, not baked by me, so all is safe. Want to put it out, everyone is welcome. I've had people say, well, I'm not in your division, doesn't matter. You know, I'm happy to have anybody. If the day works out better, come, you're welcome to come. I was lucky last year, I did have some of the other counselors from other areas popped in just for some good conversations. So just want to say thank you in advance to Ms. Vanderkool and all the staff that helps out with that. So yeah, hope you can hop in that day.
Okay, thank you for that. And my thanks to you and, of course, Mayor Wilderman for taking that doctor and being willing to tour them when no one else on the Dr. RR was available. So thank you for that. All right, if there are no further questions or comment related to that, I guess I would entertain a motion to accept the council and committee reports as presented. Councillor Forbes.
So moved.
Thank you for that. So we have a motion to accept the council and committee reports as presented. If there are no questions, I'm going to ask all in favor. That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. The next item on our list is council follow-up action list. Item 10. And this, of course, is Mr. Zier's favorite time of the meeting, where I get to ask him about what's happening in Huxley as far as the wastewater side of things is concerned.
Thank you, Reeve. So through the chair, yes, we have the findings of the report coming back to council on April 23rd. It's scheduled to present to council the findings, the modeling results, some of the recommendations that came out of that report, as well as some of our staff recommendations on moving forward with, as we talked about earlier, some of the tank inspections and that sort of thing. Really just kind of verifying our existing infrastructure within that community. As well, at that meeting, you'll see that we're going to be recommending for a future community engagement meeting where we can share these results with the Hamlet residents, and well as garner their interest in some of the programs that we're looking at bringing forward.
Thank you for that. Councillor Forbes.
Since we're discussing you, in Torrington, I received numerous calls. The water went down. Can you just give a quick explanation to what happened? Or were you aware of that?
Yes, for sure.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
No, that's good. So yeah, no, through the chair, it was, I wouldn't say it was a expected break, but we were monitoring a leak for a number of days there. It was a repair that we were going forward with and doing that day. I think we just had a lot of different infrastructure in the area, so we shut off some valves. Ideally, we like to notify the staff or the residents prior to losing pressure, but sometimes it's just out of our control with that. So we did repair the infrastructure, turn it on as fast as we could. We are probably going to have to do a notification of Alberta Environment, that sort of thing with these. But yeah, like I say, ideally, when we have a repair like this, it's preferred to notify the residents before something like that happens. So.
Or at least the counselor, so when I get the calls, I can say, yes,
Thank you.
absolutely, I know about it.
Yes, 100%.
Not finding out when they phoned me that I had to go turn my water on and I didn't have any. It's not anyone's fault. I understand it was a last minute thing.
Yeah.
Just that I have some residents, including myself, that when that water went off, my pump to my underfloor heating was running with no water going through it. So this is another issue. I just wanted to bring that forth, that when you're doing stuff with water, I'm not aware it's gonna happen, so my pump could have gotten destroyed, and I would have been on the hook for it, even though without any notice. Just wanna bring it to your awareness.
Thank you for that.
Okay. All right. Councillor Cunningham.
So I just had a question from one of our ratepayers on motion 64, and I'm not sure what could be shared or what could be expanded on, but they were just looking for some clarity on that one and just wondering if there was a dollar figure attached to that motion.
Okay, so that motion was council authorized administration to pursue the economic development opportunity as presented. We know there's been action taken there and that there is a result. Is there information that can be shared at this point?
Through the chair, yep, that action is actually completed. I think now that that's completed, you would see that listed in budget. I think the cost on that for the remainder of 2024 was listed in the information at just over 100,000 a year. Or 100,000 for this year.
Yeah, for the remainder of this current calendar budget year. Yep. And of course, we met that person prior to council earlier today. Any other questions with regard to the council follow-up action list? I'm not seeing any. Of course, I always ask a question that's not on the list. Deputy Reeve Whitstock.
Well, if there are no other questions, I would move the council follow-up action list as presented.
Okay, thank you for that motion. We have a motion to receive the information in the council follow-up action list as presented. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. We have no closed session items. And so that brings us to everybody's favorite motion of the meeting. It is 12:27 and I move adjournment. Thank you. Thank you for your time and attention and your patience throughout the course of the meeting.